You are not suffering because life is heavy, but because your mind refuses to govern itself with reason. You feel anxious because every thought is accepted without examination, and every fear is treated as truth. If you are ready to stop being ruled by automatic judgment and start living by what is truly within your control, then stay here and listen carefully. What follows is not comfort. It is instruction for the mind that wants to become steady again through discipline and truth. If you want more teachings that train the inner life to stay calm under pressure and choose virtue over reaction, subscribe and stay with this work. This is a place for those who no longer want to drift through their own thoughts. Here you will learn how to examine each impression before believing it, how to separate what belongs to you from what does not, and how to return to reason even when anxiety feels certain. Number 1. Accept only what lies within your rightful control today. Stop. Look at your life as it is, not as you wish it were. Look at the speed of your thoughts. Look at the way your mind runs ahead of your life and fills the future with images that have not happened. Look at how quickly you give your peace to things you do not command. You say you are anxious. Often what you mean is that you have handed your judgment over to fear. You have allowed a thought to enter your mind and then you have treated it as a fact. You have confused possibility with certainty. You have mistaken imagination for truth. This is the point where a person loses himself, not in events but in the way he responds to them. So listen carefully and do not waste this moment. The first work of a disciplined mind is to draw a hard line between what belongs to you and what does not. There are things in your power and things outside your power. Your judgments are in your power. Your choices are in your power. Your assent is in your power. Your refusal is in your power. Your desire is in your power when you train it. Your aversion is in your power when you correct it. Your own action is in your power. That is all. The body is not fully in your power. Other people are not in your power. Their opinions are not in your power. Praise is not in your power. Blame is not in your power. Health is not in your power in the way you want it to be. Wealth is not in your power. Reputation is not in your power. The future is not in your power. The past is not in your power. If you still think peace comes from controlling those things, you will remain a servant to anxiety. If you accept that peace begins when you give each thing its proper place, you begin to recover your freedom. An anxious person keeps reaching beyond his hands. He tries to grasp the mind of another person. He tries to force the future to become safe. He tries to prevent every loss before it arrives. He tries to make life obey him. This is why he suffers. He demands from the world what the world was never built to give. He demands certainty. He demands comfort. He demands that nothing hard should happen. He demands that other people act according to his wishes. But no one was promised that. No one was promised an easy life. No one was promised that fear would never visit the mind. What was promised is this: you can meet each moment with reason. You can meet each event with judgment. You can meet loss without surrendering your character. That is enough. That is the whole matter. A human life does not become good because it avoids pain. It becomes good because it remains upright in pain. Do not say that anxiety comes upon you as if it were a force from outside that leaves you helpless. It begins with a judgment. You see a possibility and declare it unbearable. You feel a pulse of uncertainty and tell yourself that you cannot endure it. You imagine a failure and call it ruin. Yet none of these things has happened yet. You have merely judged them in advance. So learn this well. What harms you is not the event alone, but the story you tell yourself about the event. The event may be difficult. The event may be unpleasant. The event may demand effort, patience, or loss. But difficulty is not evil. Pain is not evil. Uncertainty is not evil. What is evil is the corruption of the ruling mind when it abandons reason and bows to fear. The mind that preserves its good judgment remains free even in hardship. Begin each day by asking yourself one plain question. What is in my power today? Not what do I wish were in my power. Not what do I hope another person will do. Not what do I fear may happen later. What is in my power now? The answer is small, and that is why it is strong. I can choose my first thought. I can choose whether to obey panic. I can choose to speak honestly. I can choose to do the work in front of me. I can choose not to seek approval for every act. I can choose not to poison the day by rehearsing disasters. I can choose to accept what is already placed before me. I can choose to act with justice, self-command, courage, and wisdom. That is enough material for a noble life. You do not need to own the whole world. You need only govern your own mind. If you cannot rule your own mind, then you are ruled by every passing feeling. Anxiety thrives where there is no discipline of attention. It comes when the mind wanders from the present task and begins to feed on what it cannot know. So bring the mind back. Again and again, bring it back. When it leaps toward the future, bring it back. When it replays the past, bring it back. When it begins to argue with imagined events, bring it back. Tell yourself that the present moment is the only place where you can act. The future is not before you. It is only a set of possibilities. The past is gone. The present alone gives you the chance to choose well. A person who remains with the present works with reality. A person who leaves the present and runs ahead of it lives in error. You may think that this sounds simple and therefore weak. It is not weak, it is severe. It asks you to stop lying to yourself. It asks you to stop indulging fear as if fear were wisdom. It asks you to stop calling every discomfort a threat. It asks you to stop expecting your feelings to lead you better than reason can lead you. Feelings come and go, they are not authorities, they are events in the mind. The trained person listens to them without surrendering to them. He notices them, names them, and then judges them. If the feeling is based on a false thought, he rejects it. If it points to a duty, he acts. If it has no use, he lets it pass. This is not coldness, this is freedom. You must also understand that anxiety is often fed by desire. You desire that nothing unpleasant should happen. You desire that people should respond exactly as you wish. You desire that your path should remain smooth. You desire that you should never be embarrassed, delayed, challenged, or misunderstood. Such desires are not aligned with nature. They are fantasies dressed as needs. When you place your peace on the success of these desires, you become fragile. A single delay can disturb you. A single rude word can disturb you. A single uncertainty can disturb you. That is not strength. Strength is when desire becomes simple. I desire to act well. I desire to remain just. I desire to tell the truth. I desire to keep my mind clear. I desire to meet what comes with dignity. When desire is narrowed to what is truly yours, fear loses much of its power. So practice this every morning before the day begins to press on you. Sit still. Speak to yourself without softness. Say what may happen today. Someone may speak badly to me. My plans may fail. My body may feel weak. Work may be delayed. I may be misunderstood. I may have to wait. I may have to endure discomfort. I may not receive what I wanted. Then answer yourself plainly. None of these things can force me to act against reason unless I allow it. None of these things can take my virtue from me. None of these things can stop me from choosing honesty, patience, self-restraint, courage, and justice. If I keep these, I keep what matters. This is not a ritual for comfort, it is training for battle. You are preparing your mind not for ease but for reality. The person who never prepares his mind is shocked by life. He calls every inconvenience an attack. He calls every disappointment a betrayal. He calls every delay a disaster. But life owes you nothing. It owes you no explanation for hardship. Your duty is not to demand a painless world. Your duty is to become a better judge of what matters. When something happens, ask first whether it is in your power. If it is, take action. If it is not, release your demand that the world obey you. Many suffer not because events are so terrible, but because they fight what cannot be changed. They waste strength on resistance. They become bitter over the very limits that define human life. Do not do this. Save your strength for the part of life that belongs to you. There is a second practice that must be joined to this one. Before you answer any disturbing thought, pause. Do not rush. Anxiety wants speed. It wants you to react before you inspect. It wants you to submit before you think. Refuse. Say to yourself, this is only an impression. It is not yet my judgment. It is not yet my choice. It is not yet my life. Then look at it clearly. What exactly is being claimed? Is this within my control? Is this certain or only imagined? What action is required of me now? This pause is small, but it is the gate through which freedom enters. Many people never become free because they never stop long enough to examine their own thoughts. They obey the first movement of fear and then wonder why their lives feel scattered. A disciplined mind does not mean a mind without fear. It means a mind that refuses to be governed by fear. There will be moments when your chest tightens. There will be moments when the future looks uncertain. There will be moments when you feel the old urge to run, to avoid, to distract yourself, to seek reassurance from others. In those moments, do not ask how to feel better first. Ask how to think better. Feeling follows judgment more often than people admit. When the judgment is corrected, the feeling weakens. When the judgment is cowardly, the feeling grows. So correct the judgment. Say, this thing may be hard, but it is not beyond me. This loss may hurt, but it does not touch my character unless I let it. This uncertainty is not my enemy. It is simply a part of life. Speak this way until the mind learns to obey. You must also stop making your peace dependent on results. This is one of the deepest causes of anxiety. You work, but then you demand that your work must succeed in the exact way you imagined. You speak, but then you demand that others must approve. You choose, but then you demand that the choice must bring comfort. This demand is a trap. The outcome is not yours to command. The effort is yours. The intention is yours. The honesty is yours. The discipline is yours. These belong to you. The result belongs to the larger order of life. You may plant carefully and still not harvest as you hoped. You may act wisely and still face hardship. You may speak rightly and still be rejected. None of this makes your effort worthless. The worth of an act is not judged only by its outcome, but by the quality of the mind that performed it. This is why you must learn to love the work itself. Do not work only for reward. Do not behave well only when it is convenient. Do not control yourself only when others are watching. Do not speak truth only when it brings approval. The whole point is to become the sort of person who chooses what is right because it is right. That is virtue. That is the only good that cannot be taken from you. When you place goodness in your own conduct rather than in external reward, anxiety loses one of its strongest weapons. It can no longer say, if this fails, then all is lost. No. If I have acted justly, then nothing is lost that truly belongs to me. Observe how anxiety weakens the person who seeks certainty before action. He waits, he delays, he asks for more signs, he wants the future to speak before he moves. But life does not offer that kind of promise. Often the right path must be taken under uncertainty. Often courage means moving while still feeling fear. Often wisdom means choosing without guarantee. This is not a defect in life. This is the condition under which virtue reveals itself. If everything were obvious, there would be no need for judgment. If everything were safe, there would be no need for courage. If nothing were difficult, there would be no need for self-mastery. You are not here to be protected from every challenge. You are here to meet challenge well. Consider the common habit of imagining the worst in order to gain control over it. People tell themselves that if they rehearse disaster, they will be prepared. This is a weak kind of preparation when it is done without reason. It becomes a way of feeding fear while pretending to master it. True preparation does not dwell on horror. True preparation asks how one should act if difficulty comes. It asks what judgments must be ready. It asks what duties remain no matter what happens. It asks how one can remain just, disciplined, and clear-headed. That is enough. You do not need endless mental pictures of ruin. You need a mind trained to answer events with steadiness. The Stoic does not build a home in dread. He builds a habit of right judgment. When you feel anxiety rising, bring your attention to the thing directly in front of you. Do the next right act, not the whole life, not the whole future. The next right act. Answer the message, finish the task, take the walk, speak to the person, wash the dish, write the page. Breathe slowly and keep your mind on what is before it. A restless mind is often healed by duty. The mind that is fed with duty has less room to feed on fear. This is why idleness often worsens anxiety. It leaves the mind to wander. A trained person does not wait to feel ready. He returns to the task and lets action restore order to thought. There is another hard truth you must face. Much of your anxiety comes from a refusal to accept yourself honestly. You know where you are weak. You know where you avoid. You know where you lie to yourself. You know the habits you protect. You know the duties you keep postponing. The mind that does not face itself grows anxious because it senses its own disorder. Self-deception is never peaceful for long. It asks for constant maintenance. It must keep inventing excuses. It must keep avoiding examination. It must keep flattering the worst parts of itself. Do not be this person. Be severe with yourself in the right way. Ask at the end of each day where you were ruled by fear. Ask where you chose comfort over duty. Ask where you imagined an insult instead of testing the fact. Ask where you surrendered your judgment. Then correct it without drama. The purpose is not shame. The purpose is truth. An evening review is one of the finest tools for the anxious mind. Before sleep, go back through the day. Where did fear take control? What did I assume without proof? What did I avoid? Where did I act from reason? Where did I act from impulse? Where was I just? Where was I weak? Where did I cling to what was outside my power? Then make a simple resolution for tomorrow. Not a large promise, a clear one. Tomorrow I will pause before I react. Tomorrow I will not demand control over what does not belong to me. Tomorrow I will return to what is mine to govern. This habit trains the soul through repetition. Great change rarely arrives in a single moment. It grows through repeated discipline. Do not expect perfection from yourself at once. Expect work. Expect correction. Expect many returns. A man becomes strong by practicing return after failure. He notices that he has wandered and returns. He notices that he has reacted and returns. He notices that he has feared what is not his to fear and returns. This return is not weakness. It is training. What matters is not that you never stray. What matters is that you do not remain lost. A life of reason is built through repeated recoveries of the mind. Every recovery strengthens the ruling part of the soul. Now listen closely to this. The anxiety you feel is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is proof that your mind needs discipline. A field left untended grows wild. The same is true of thought. If you do not train attention, fear will train it for you. If you do not train judgment, impulse will train it for you. If you do not train desire, appetite will train it for you. If you do not train the will to accept what cannot be changed, resentment will train it for you. So take your mind back. It is your responsibility. No one else can do this for you. No one else can think your thoughts in a better way. No one else can choose your judgments. No one else can decide whether you will surrender to fear or stand with reason. This is where endurance becomes important. When anxiety makes you want to avoid a hard conversation or abandon a difficult duty or seek escape through distraction, do the opposite. Stay, endure the discomfort, sit with the unease long enough to discover that you can bear it. This is how fear loses authority. Fear grows when it is obeyed immediately. Fear weakens when it is met with steady refusal. You do not have to enjoy discomfort. You only have to recognize that discomfort is not a command, it is a condition. Conditions are not masters. Reason is the master. The more you practice remaining steady in discomfort, the more your mind learns that it is not fragile. Be honest about how often you have mistaken comfort for good. You have likely done this many times. You have called avoidance prudence. You have called delay patience. You have called surrender rest. But if the result was that your fear grew stronger and your character grew weaker, then you did not choose wisely. Wisdom does not ask whether the easy path feels pleasant. It asks whether the choice preserves your reason and strengthens your virtue. Sometimes the right act feels hard because it is hard. That does not make it wrong. It may be exactly what your soul needs. When you cannot change the circumstance, then change the judgment. This is not a slogan. It is a practical command. You may not be able to change the weather. You may not be able to change the delay. You may not be able to change the other person's mood. You may not be able to change the loss already suffered. But you can change your opinion of what is happening. You can refuse to call a delay a catastrophe. You can refuse to call rejection a wound to your worth. You can refuse to call inconvenience an injury to your peace. You can remind yourself that every external event is material for virtue if you use it rightly. Hardship can become patience. Injustice can become justice. Delay can become endurance. Uncertainty can become clear judgment. Nothing need be wasted. The person governed by reason does not seek a life without pressure. He seeks a mind that remains sound under pressure. That is the real aim, not to remove every challenge, but to become worthy of the challenge. Anxiety tells you that you must first secure the world before you can be calm. Stoic discipline tells you the opposite. Become calm in the world as it is. Be useful where you are. Do what is yours to do. Let the rest follow its own course. This attitude does not make you passive. It makes you effective. The person who is less disturbed sees more clearly. The person who is less ruled by fear acts more cleanly. The person who accepts limits wastes less time fighting shadows. There is dignity in this acceptance. It is not defeat. It is not resignation to weakness. It is the mature recognition that reality is larger than your wishes and that your worth does not depend on bending reality to your mood. You are part of an order that you did not make. Your task is to live in agreement with that order, not in protest against it. The more you align your judgment with what is true, the less anxious you become. Why? Because truth does not ask you to carry false expectations. It asks you to carry only what belongs to your station as a human being: reason, duty, self-command, and the capacity to choose what is right. So when anxiety speaks, answer it with this question: what is required of me now? Not tomorrow, not in the imagined future, now. If a task must be done, do it. If a duty must be spoken, speak it. If silence is wiser, keep silent. If action is needed, act. If acceptance is needed, accept. If correction is needed, correct. This simple question cuts through confusion because it turns the mind away from endless speculation and back toward conduct. A human being is not made noble by how much he worries. He is made noble by how well he acts. You may notice that this teaching leaves no room for self-pity. That is because self-pity weakens the soul. It invites you to look at your suffering as if suffering itself were evidence that you are owed something more than life gives. But you are not owed exemption from struggle. You are not owed a life without uncertainty. You are not owed immunity from loss. What you are owed, if anything can be said that way, is the opportunity to meet every one of these things with reason. That opportunity is enough for a wise person. He does not ask for the world to be gentle. He asks to remain good within it. And if you have failed before, then begin again now. Do not carry the shame of old failures as if they define you. The past is outside your power. Your judgment of the past is in your power. Your conduct now is in your power. The disciplined person does not waste time rehearsing his failures except to correct them. He looks back only to learn where his judgment was weak and how to strengthen it. Then he returns to the present with a clearer mind. This is the proper use of memory, not regret, not self-torture. Correction. You are allowed to be a learner, but not a liar. You are allowed to be under training, but not to make excuses forever. You are allowed to feel fear, but not to enthrone it. You are allowed to be human, but not to abandon the human gift of reason. Reason is what lifts you above the pull of impulse. Reason tells you that not every feeling deserves obedience. Reason tells you that not every thought is true. Reason tells you that your peace is built by what you choose, not by what happens around you. This is why the study of your own mind is not optional. It is the central work of life. Make the first useful habit this. Each morning name one thing outside your control and release it before the day begins. Name one thing within your control and commit to it. Then, during the day, return to that distinction whenever fear starts to spread. It will not end anxiety in one day. Do not expect that. But it will weaken the habit of confusion. And as confusion weakens, fear loses ground. The mind becomes simpler. The simple mind is not foolish. It is clear. It knows what belongs to it and what does not. It no longer tries to carry the whole world on its back. Make the second useful habit this. When you feel the surge of anxiety, pause for one breath and ask whether your judgment is within your power. It is. Then correct it. Tell yourself the thing as it is. This is not danger in the form I imagine. This is uncertainty. This is inconvenience. This is loss. This is discomfort. These things are hard but not evil. What matters is how I respond. The truth spoken plainly has power over fear because fear survives on exaggeration and blur. Clear words reduce fear. Clear judgment restores order. Make the third useful habit this. At the end of the day, ask whether you lived as one who accepted what he could not control and governed what he could. This question is severe, but it is kind in the only way that matters. It leads you back to yourself. If the answer is no, then do not despair. Adjust. If the answer is yes, then be grateful in the sober way of a disciplined soul and prepare to do it again tomorrow. The goal is not a single victory. The goal is a steady character. Remember that your life is short. You do not have endless days to waste on imagined injuries and borrowed fears. You do not have endless days to hand your attention to what lies beyond your grasp. Each day spent in anxious resistance is a day in which your life is diminished. Each day spent in truthful acceptance and disciplined action is a day in which your life becomes more your own. That is why this work matters now, not later, now. The hour is always the right hour to begin governing the mind. There is no better time than the present, because there is no other time in which you can act. So stand where you are and be honest. You do not need to control the whole world. You do not need to know the whole future. You do not need every answer before you move. You need judgment, you need discipline, you need the courage to accept what is not yours, and the strength to govern what is. That is enough to begin living like a free person. And if you practice this day after day, then anxiety will no longer sit on the throne of your mind. It may still speak. Let it speak. It is not the ruler. Let fear appear. It is not the ruler. Let uncertainty remain. It is not the ruler. Reason is the ruler when you choose to obey it. Virtue is the ruler when you choose it above comfort. The ruled mind is a burden. The self-governed mind is a relief. This is the path. Take it today. Do not wait for courage to arrive before acting courageously. Act. Accept what is not yours. Govern what is. Keep your mind on duty. Keep your soul upright. And when the day ends, know that you have lived not as a slave to fear, but as a human being who remembered what was always within reach. Number 2. Examine every anxious thought before granting it your belief. You wake each morning believing that the greatest danger you will face comes from difficult people, uncertain events, or unexpected hardship. Yet before any of those things have reached you, another force has already begun shaping your day. It is the unexamined thought that enters your mind and quietly asks for your agreement. It does not force you, it waits for your consent. The tragedy is that most people never notice the moment when they surrender it. They mistake the first appearance of a thought for the truth itself. They do not pause, they do not question, they simply believe. From that single act of carelessness, anxiety begins to govern the day. A disciplined life begins with a disciplined judgment. Before you ask whether the world is against you, ask whether your own thinking has become your greatest opponent. Many people spend years trying to change their surroundings while never examining the conclusions they draw from those surroundings. They assume that every fearful thought deserves immediate obedience. They assume that every uncomfortable feeling points toward real danger. They assume that every uncertain future must be feared simply because it cannot yet be seen. None of these assumptions have earned the right to rule your mind. They become powerful only because you allow them to pass through the gate of reason without inspection. The mind receives countless impressions every day. One arrives when someone speaks sharply to you. Another appears when a plan changes unexpectedly. Another comes when silence from another person lasts longer than you expected. These impressions arrive quickly. They present themselves as complete stories before the facts have even unfolded. They whisper that you have been rejected. They insist that failure is certain. They predict humiliation before a single event has occurred. If you immediately accept these claims, then you become the servant of appearances rather than the guardian of truth. There is a difference between experiencing a thought and approving it. That difference is where freedom lives. A thought may arrive without your invitation, but your agreement is another matter entirely. You possess the ability to examine what enters your mind before allowing it to shape your actions. This ability is not automatic. It grows only through deliberate practice. Every day offers opportunities to strengthen it. Every anxious thought becomes a lesson in self-government if you refuse to surrender your judgment too quickly. Consider how often you have spoken to yourself with greater harshness than any stranger ever has. One mistake becomes proof that you are incapable. One criticism becomes evidence that no one respects you. One delay becomes certainty that your efforts are useless. Look carefully at these conclusions. They were never delivered by reality itself. They were created inside your own reasoning. The event was small. The judgment made it enormous. The wound came less from what happened than from what your mind declared about what happened. A thoughtful person learns to interrupt this process before it gains strength. When anxiety begins speaking, do not answer it immediately with another anxious thought. Instead, ask a simple question. What evidence does this thought actually possess? Not what does it feel like, not how convincing does it sound. Ask what it truly knows. You will discover that many of your fears survive only because they have never been questioned. They depend upon haste. They depend upon your willingness to believe without examination. Reason does not reject reality. Reason insists upon seeing reality clearly. This distinction matters. A disciplined person does not pretend that difficulty cannot happen. He refuses only to invent suffering that has not yet arrived. There is enough work in responding wisely to actual events. There is no need to exhaust yourself responding to imagined disasters created by an undisciplined mind. Every hour spent arguing with fantasies is an hour stolen from the duties that stand before you. Many people confuse constant worry with careful preparation. They believe that repeated fear somehow protects them from future disappointment. Yet anxiety has never prevented hardship. It has only caused a person to experience hardship twice. Once inside imagination, and again if reality eventually requires it. Such living wastes the strength that could have been devoted to wise action. Preparation belongs to reason. Endless worry belongs to confusion. Learn to separate the two. When a disturbing thought appears, treat it as you would a stranger requesting entrance into your home. You would not immediately hand over your possessions without first learning who stands before you. Yet many people hand over their peace to the very first fearful idea that knocks upon the mind. They ask no questions. They demand no proof. They surrender before the conversation has even begun. This habit cannot coexist with inner freedom. Train yourself to become slower than your impulses. Anxiety depends upon speed. It hopes you will react before thinking. It wants your body to move before your judgment awakens. Refuse to cooperate with this habit. Create a brief space between impression and response. Within that space, ask yourself whether this thought deserves belief or correction. A single calm moment can prevent hours of unnecessary suffering. Notice how anxiety often disguises itself as certainty. It never says that something unpleasant might happen. It declares that it will happen. It never says that another person may misunderstand you. It insists they already have. It never admits ignorance. It speaks with complete confidence while possessing almost no knowledge. This alone should make you cautious. A wise mind grows suspicious whenever fear begins claiming certainty about what has not yet unfolded. You cannot prevent every anxious thought from appearing. That is not your task. Your task is to refuse them authority until reason has completed its examination. Clouds may pass across the sky without changing the mountain beneath them. Let passing thoughts resemble those clouds. Observe them. Acknowledge them. Do not mistake their movement for your identity. Your character is built by the judgments you deliberately choose, not by every passing impression that enters awareness. One useful discipline begins before the day's demands arrive. Sit quietly for several moments each morning and prepare your mind for careful judgment. Tell yourself that many thoughts will seek immediate agreement today. Some will promise comfort through avoidance. Others will encourage resentment. Some will attempt to magnify small inconveniences into unbearable burdens. Resolve before leaving your home that none of these thoughts will receive your belief without examination. This simple commitment changes the quality of an entire day because it places reason at the entrance to the mind. As the day unfolds, continue returning to this discipline. During conversation, notice what your mind says before your mouth speaks. During disappointment, notice what explanation your thoughts immediately construct. During uncertainty, notice what future they begin predicting. Instead of accepting these conclusions automatically, hold them before reason as though presenting evidence before a careful judge. Some thoughts will prove worthy, many will collapse under honest inspection. Pay close attention to the language your anxious mind prefers. It speaks in absolutes. It says always. It says never. It says everyone. It says no one. It enlarges single moments until they appear to describe an entire life. Such thinking abandons proportion. A rational mind restores balance. One mistake does not erase years of honest effort. One rejection does not define your worth. One difficult season does not determine the whole course of your life. Anxiety survives through exaggeration. Reason survives through accuracy. Complaining also deserves examination. Every complaint begins with a judgment that reality should have unfolded differently. Before speaking your dissatisfaction aloud, ask whether your complaint improves your character or merely announces your resistance. Many complaints change nothing except the condition of your own mind. They deepen irritation while weakening endurance. A disciplined person does not forbid all criticism. He simply refuses to complain without purpose. If action is possible, act. If action is impossible, preserve your composure instead of multiplying frustration through endless protest. Relationships provide constant opportunities to practice this discipline. Another person's words often awaken immediate conclusions inside your mind. You assume disrespect where none was intended. You imagine hidden motives without evidence. You interpret silence as hostility. These judgments create conflicts that reality never demanded. Examine them carefully before responding. You cannot govern another person's thoughts, but you can govern the conclusions you choose to draw from their actions. The same practice belongs at work. A challenge appears, and the anxious mind immediately predicts failure. A difficult assignment arrives, and your thoughts announce that you are unequal to the task. Yet the work has not even begun. The judgment arrives before the effort. Reverse this habit. Let effort come before conclusion. Allow your actions to provide evidence instead of allowing fear to provide predictions. Do not become discouraged when you discover how many careless judgments occupy your day. This discovery is not defeat, it is progress. The person who finally sees his own habits has already begun escaping them. The truly dangerous condition is not having anxious thoughts. It is living without ever recognizing that they have been directing your choices. Awareness marks the beginning of self-government. Another evening practice strengthens this work. Before sleep, revisit the conversations and decisions of the day. Ask yourself which thoughts deserved belief and which were accepted too quickly. Identify one moment where anxiety spoke louder than reason. Then imagine how a disciplined judgment could have responded instead. This exercise is not performed to punish yourself. It exists to sharpen tomorrow's judgment through today's experience. Improvement belongs to those willing to study themselves honestly. You may discover that many of your strongest fears never became reality. Remember this carefully. The mind that repeatedly predicts disaster gradually loses credibility when examined honestly. Keep a quiet record within yourself of the fears that proved false. Let experience teach your judgment. Each false prediction reminds you that anxiety is not a reliable guide. Reason deserves your confidence because reason waits for evidence before reaching conclusions. There will still be days when your thoughts feel loud and restless. Do not measure success by the absence of anxious impressions. Measure success by the quality of your response. A person becomes stronger not because fearful thoughts disappear forever, but because they no longer receive immediate obedience. Every examined judgment strengthens your ruling mind. Every rejected falsehood weakens the habit of fear. Your greatest responsibility is not controlling every circumstance. It is preserving the integrity of your judgment amid changing circumstances. Events will continue arriving without your permission. Other people will continue acting according to their own understanding. Fortune will continue changing direction without warning. Yet none of these things possess the authority to determine your inner condition unless you first agree with the fearful conclusions your anxious mind presents. Remember that every belief shapes a life. Every accepted judgment becomes the seed of future action. Examine those seeds carefully before allowing them to grow. Plant truth instead of assumption. Plant reason instead of panic. Plant patience instead of haste. Plant honesty instead of comforting illusion. The harvest of your character depends upon what you repeatedly choose to believe. From this day forward, become the careful guardian of your own thinking. Let no anxious thought pass unexamined. Let no fearful conclusion receive instant approval. Let every judgment stand before reason until its truth has been tested. The person who governs this single habit begins quietly transforming every part of life. Relationships become steadier because reactions become wiser. Work becomes stronger because attention remains clear. Difficulties become teachers because judgment remains disciplined. Peace does not arrive because the world finally becomes predictable. Peace arrives because your own mind has learned that belief must be earned, never given away carelessly. That is the beginning of genuine freedom, and it begins with the very next thought that asks for your agreement. Number 3. Govern your judgments with reason instead of fearful imagination. Your life is not directed first by what happens around you. It is directed by the judgments you quietly form about what happens. Before your hands move, before your voice speaks, before your emotions settle into anger, fear, or despair, your mind has already made a decision about the meaning of the event before you. That decision often happens so quickly that you mistake it for reality itself. Yet this hidden judgment is where your freedom is either preserved or surrendered. If your judgments are ruled by reason, your life gains stability. If they are ruled by fearful imagination, your life becomes a series of unnecessary battles against shadows that never possessed the strength you assigned to them. Fearful imagination has one great advantage over an undisciplined mind. It arrives without asking permission. It creates complete stories from incomplete facts. It fills silence with suspicion. It fills uncertainty with disaster. It fills ordinary setbacks with permanent defeat. It speaks confidently even when it knows almost nothing. Because it speaks first, many people believe it deserves the final word. They never challenge its authority. They accept its version of reality before reason has even entered the conversation. This habit quietly shapes an entire life. Look carefully at the moments when your peace disappears. It is rarely because the world has immediately become unbearable. More often, your own imagination has rushed ahead of the present moment and begun constructing outcomes that have not arrived. A delayed response becomes proof of rejection. A difficult conversation becomes evidence that every relationship is failing. A single obstacle becomes the beginning of permanent decline. None of these conclusions exist in the event itself. They are added by the mind. Once added, they begin directing your emotions as though they were undeniable facts. A disciplined person refuses to decorate reality with invented suffering. He accepts facts exactly as they appear, neither shrinking them through denial nor enlarging them through fear. This demands courage because the mind often prefers dramatic stories to simple truth. Truth is frequently plain. Fear insists upon making it complicated. Truth says that today contains work to be done. Fear insists that today's work will certainly destroy tomorrow. Truth notices difficulty. Fear announces catastrophe. One preserves clarity, the other steals it. You have likely spent years believing that your emotional turmoil was created by changing circumstances. Yet examine your own experience honestly. The same event that unsettles one person leaves another composed. The difference cannot lie entirely within the event itself. The difference lies within the judgment each person forms. One mind declares that hardship is unbearable. Another recognizes hardship as demanding effort but not surrender. One mind interprets criticism as proof of personal failure. Another treats criticism as information worthy of careful examination before deciding whether it deserves acceptance. The event remains the same. Judgment changes everything. Reason asks questions before reaching conclusions. Fear races toward conclusions before asking questions. This difference defines two completely different ways of living. Whenever something unexpected enters your day, pause long enough to ask yourself what has actually happened. Separate the observable fact from the explanation your imagination immediately begins constructing. Often you will discover that reality remains remarkably small while your interpretation has become enormous. That discovery alone weakens the influence of fear because it reminds you that imagination is capable of creating burdens far heavier than life itself has placed upon your shoulders. There is great danger in believing every picture your mind creates. The imagination possesses remarkable power. It can prepare you for wise action when guided by reason, but it can also imprison you when guided by fear. Left without discipline, it invents conversations that never occur, humiliations that never happen, failures that never arrive, and disasters that exist only within the private theater of the mind. While these scenes unfold internally, your body responds as though they already belong to reality. The heart races, the muscles tighten, sleep becomes restless, peace disappears. Yet nothing outside you has actually changed, only your judgment has changed. This is why the government of the mind must begin before the government of circumstances. You cannot command the future to satisfy your preferences. You cannot require other people to fulfill your expectations. You cannot arrange life so perfectly that uncertainty never visits you again. But you can decide that your judgments will no longer be handed over to fearful imagination without examination. This decision marks the beginning of genuine strength because it places authority back where it belongs. When you wake each morning, do not first ask what challenges may appear before you. Ask instead what kind of judgment you intend to practice. Tell yourself that today many impressions will seek immediate approval. Some will encourage resentment, others will encourage discouragement. Some will tempt you toward unnecessary worry. Make your first commitment not to controlling events, but to preserving sound judgment regardless of events. This quiet preparation strengthens the mind before the first difficulty ever arrives. Throughout the day, practice describing situations in the simplest language possible. Instead of saying that everything is collapsing, say that one plan has changed. Instead of declaring that no one understands you, acknowledge that one conversation became difficult. Instead of insisting that failure defines your future, admit only that one attempt did not produce the desired result. Fear thrives upon exaggerated language because exaggerated language magnifies emotional disturbance. Reason restores proportion through careful speech. The words you choose quietly educate your own mind. Pay attention to how often you attempt to predict outcomes that no one can honestly know. The anxious imagination constantly claims knowledge it does not possess. It insists that disappointment is unavoidable. It guarantees rejection before another person has spoken. It forecasts defeat before effort has begun. Such confidence is false confidence. It pretends to possess certainty while standing upon ignorance. A rational mind refuses to make promises about an unseen future. It remains committed instead to responding wisely whenever the future eventually reveals itself. Many people secretly believe that expecting the worst somehow protects them from pain. They imagine that disappointment will hurt less if they rehearse it repeatedly beforehand. Yet repeated anticipation does not reduce suffering, it multiplies it. It forces the mind to endure imagined hardship long before reality has demanded anything. Such a habit exhausts energy that could have strengthened present action. True preparedness consists not in endless fearful prediction, but in steady readiness to meet whatever actually arrives with courage and discipline. Observe your conversations with yourself during moments of uncertainty. The frightened mind rarely speaks with balance. It announces permanent conclusions from temporary conditions. It mistakes possibility for inevitability. It mistakes discomfort for destruction. It mistakes delay for defeat. None of these conclusions survive careful examination. They survive only because the mind accepts them while emotion is speaking louder than reason. A valuable exercise begins whenever anxiety attempts to direct your attention. Write down the judgment hidden beneath your emotion. Do not merely say that you feel afraid. Ask what belief has produced that fear. Perhaps you believe that failure would make your life worthless. Perhaps you believe that another person's opinion determines your value. Perhaps you believe that uncertainty itself is unbearable. Once the judgment stands before you clearly, examine whether it deserves your loyalty. Many deeply rooted fears depend upon beliefs that collapse the moment reason inspects them honestly. Another useful discipline is learning to distinguish inconvenience from genuine harm. Modern minds often confuse the two. A delay feels like disaster. Embarrassment feels like permanent damage. Temporary discomfort feels like lasting defeat. Yet inconvenience touches only circumstances. Harm touches character. If your honesty remains intact, if your justice remains intact, if your self-command remains intact, then your highest good remains untouched regardless of external conditions. This realization removes much of fear's authority because it changes what you consider truly important. Do not become offended by reality simply because it refuses to obey your expectations. Much inner disturbance comes not from life itself, but from demanding that life unfold according to personal preference. When events differ from your plans, reason asks what duty now stands before you. Fear complains that reality has become unfair. One response preserves strength, the other wastes it. Complaining never repairs the event, it merely deepens resistance within the mind. The same principle applies to other people. You cannot compel another person to think with perfect wisdom, to speak with perfect kindness, or to choose according to your standards. Yet fearful imagination constantly insists that their actions must determine your peace. Refuse this arrangement. Let your conduct remain your responsibility. Let their conduct remain theirs. If correction is necessary, offer it with justice. If patience is necessary, practice it willingly. If separation becomes necessary, accept it without hatred. Never allow another person's choices to persuade you that abandoning your own virtue would somehow improve the situation. As evening approaches, refuse the temptation to review your day only through emotion. Review it through reason instead. Ask where your imagination attempted to govern your judgment. Notice where you enlarged small problems into overwhelming burdens. Observe where simple facts became dramatic stories inside your own thinking. Then quietly replace each mistaken judgment with one that aligns more closely with reality. This exercise strengthens tomorrow because the disciplined mind grows through honest correction rather than self-condemnation. You will not remove fearful imagination from your life entirely. That is neither possible nor necessary. Your task is not to eliminate every alarming thought, but to deny those thoughts the authority to direct your choices. A visitor may knock at your door without becoming master of your home. Treat fearful imagination the same way. Recognize its arrival without surrendering your reason. Let it speak if it must. Then decide carefully whether its advice deserves acceptance. Most often it does not. Real confidence is frequently misunderstood. Many imagine confidence to mean believing that nothing difficult will happen. Such confidence is fragile because reality eventually disproves it. Genuine confidence rests elsewhere. It comes from trusting your capacity to meet events with sound judgment, regardless of their outcome. This confidence cannot be destroyed by uncertainty because it does not depend upon certainty. It depends upon the disciplined use of reason, which remains available in every circumstance. When your mind becomes accustomed to rational judgment, many ordinary fears lose their influence naturally. You stop wasting energy defending yourself against imagined insults. You stop chasing constant reassurance. You stop demanding guarantees before acting. You begin noticing how much of your former suffering was produced not by reality, but by interpretations that lacked wisdom. This discovery is humbling because it reveals how often you participated in your own unrest. Yet it is also deeply liberating because what has been created by judgment can be corrected through judgment. Your daily work, therefore, is wonderfully simple, though never easy. Guard the quality of your conclusions more carefully than the comfort of your emotions. Let reason become the measure by which every judgment is tested. Refuse to grant fearful imagination the privilege of speaking as though it were truth. Stand firmly within the present moment where action is possible, instead of wandering endlessly through futures that exist only inside an undisciplined mind. Every sunrise presents another opportunity to practice this discipline. Every conversation offers another opportunity to choose interpretation over impulse. Every setback invites another opportunity to distinguish reality from invention. Every disappointment asks whether you will respond with wisdom or surrender to exaggerated conclusions. This work never truly ends because the government of the mind requires constant attention. Yet each faithful effort strengthens the inner ruler that no external circumstance can command. Remember this whenever fear attempts to persuade you that peace is impossible. Peace is not born from controlling tomorrow. Peace is born from refusing to let imagination outrank reason. A clear judgment does not remove every hardship from life, but it prevents hardship from becoming something greater than it truly is. Guard that clarity with unwavering discipline. Examine every conclusion carefully. Accept only what reason confirms. Release everything that fear invents. In doing so, you reclaim the authority that has always belonged within your own mind, and from that authority grows a life shaped not by restless imagination, but by steady and disciplined wisdom. Number 4. Strengthen your character through disciplined daily self-examination always. The person who refuses to examine himself will spend his life trying to correct everything except the one place where lasting change begins. He will blame difficult circumstances for habits he has never questioned. He will accuse other people of creating emotions that were first shaped by his own judgments. He will search for better conditions while carrying the same undisciplined mind into every new situation. Years will pass, surroundings will change, faces will change, opportunities will come and go. Yet his inner life will remain trapped inside the same patterns because he has never gathered the courage to stand before himself without excuse. Your greatest task is not discovering what the world thinks about you. Your greatest task is discovering what is true about you. This requires a kind of honesty that most people avoid because it demands the surrender of comforting illusions. It is easier to criticize another person's conduct than to investigate your own motives. It is easier to explain away your failures than to admit where your discipline was absent. It is easier to believe that life has treated you unfairly than to acknowledge how often your own choices have quietly shaped your present condition. Yet freedom never grows from avoidance. Freedom begins the moment you decide that truth about yourself is more valuable than protecting your pride. Character is not strengthened by wishing to become better. Character is strengthened through repeated observation of the life you are actually living. Every day your actions reveal your priorities more clearly than your intentions ever will. A person may speak endlessly about patience while becoming irritated by every inconvenience. Another may praise courage while continually retreating from difficult duties. Someone may claim to value honesty while constantly shaping words to preserve approval. Self-examination removes the distance between what you claim to believe and how you truly live. Many people imagine that knowing themselves means understanding their preferences, talents, or ambitions. That is only a small part of self-knowledge. A disciplined life demands something much deeper. It asks whether your decisions are directed by reason or by appetite. It asks whether your words improve situations or merely express emotion. It asks whether your actions are governed by principle or by changing moods. Until these questions become part of your daily life, your understanding of yourself remains incomplete. Begin each morning with quiet intention before the demands of the day begin pulling your attention in every direction. Do not immediately reach toward distraction. Sit with your own mind while it is still calm enough to hear. Ask yourself what kind of person you intend to become before the day ends. Do not ask how successful you hope to appear. Do not ask how comfortable you expect to feel. Ask instead whether today's choices will reflect wisdom, fairness, restraint, and courage. Let these qualities become your measure rather than the unpredictable events that await you. As you prepare for the day, recognize that your greatest challenge will not always arrive through dramatic events. More often it appears in ordinary moments that seem too small to deserve attention. It appears when impatience enters your voice during a simple conversation. It appears when resentment quietly forms because another person failed to meet your expectations. It appears when pride encourages you to defend an obvious mistake instead of correcting it. It appears when comfort persuades you to postpone a duty that should be completed today. Character is not tested only during extraordinary moments. It is revealed continuously through ordinary choices repeated without witnesses. Throughout the day, become an observer of your own conduct. Watch your reactions with the same seriousness that a careful craftsman watches his own work. Notice how quickly your attention seeks excuses whenever discipline becomes uncomfortable. Observe how eagerly the mind explains away weakness by pointing toward circumstances beyond your influence. Every excuse deserves careful examination because each one attempts to protect a habit that prevents growth. A mind committed to improvement becomes suspicious whenever it hears itself searching for reasons why responsibility belongs elsewhere. Do not fear discovering faults within yourself. Fear remaining unaware of them. Hidden weaknesses quietly direct an entire life because they operate without resistance. Once brought into clear view, they become capable of correction. The purpose of self-examination is never humiliation. Its purpose is alignment between your principles and your conduct. You cannot repair what you refuse to identify. You cannot strengthen qualities that remain unmeasured. Honest awareness becomes the beginning of deliberate improvement. Pay attention not only to your visible actions, but also to the intentions beneath them. Two people may perform the same outward deed while guided by entirely different motives. One may speak kindly from genuine concern, another may speak kindly only to gain approval. One may remain silent out of wisdom, another may remain silent from fear. Outward appearances often conceal inward disorder. Daily examination uncovers these hidden motives so that virtue becomes something genuine rather than merely performed. There will be moments when you discover uncomfortable truths about yourself. You may recognize how often vanity influences your decisions. You may notice how easily anger disguises itself as justice. You may realize that much of your effort has been directed toward impressing others rather than improving your own character. Receive these discoveries without bitterness. They are not reasons for despair. They are invitations to begin living more honestly. A person who uncovers one genuine weakness has gained something far more valuable than someone who spends years protecting a false image of perfection. Guard yourself against measuring progress through comparison with other people. Comparison distracts the mind from its proper work. Someone else may possess greater wealth, greater recognition, or greater natural ability. None of these observations answer the only question that truly belongs to you. Are you becoming more disciplined than you were yesterday? The contest worthy of your attention exists between your present character and your former habits. Victory over another person changes little. Victory over your own weaknesses changes everything. When another person's behavior disturbs you, resist the urge to begin your examination with them. Begin with yourself. Ask why their actions have unsettled your peace. Ask what expectation within your own mind has been challenged. Ask whether your reaction reflects wisdom or wounded pride. This practice does not excuse another person's wrongdoing. It simply refuses to allow their conduct to distract you from governing your own. Every difficult encounter becomes an opportunity to strengthen self-command instead of multiplying resentment. Your speech deserves careful examination because words reveal the condition of the inner life. At the end of each conversation, ask yourself whether your words were necessary, truthful, and measured. Did you speak to clarify or merely to display knowledge? Did you listen with genuine attention or simply wait for another opportunity to speak? Did your language create understanding or deepen division? Every sentence you release into the world leaves evidence of your character behind it. Learn from that evidence instead of ignoring it. Examine also how you spend your attention. Many people protect their money with great care while allowing their attention to be scattered without resistance. Hours disappear through idle distraction while duties remain unfinished. The mind grows restless because it has abandoned meaningful work for constant stimulation. Ask yourself each evening whether your attention served your highest purpose or merely followed whatever demanded immediate interest. Attention directed by discipline becomes a powerful servant. Attention ruled by impulse becomes a constant source of dissatisfaction. Do not overlook your private thoughts simply because no one else can hear them. The quality of your unseen thinking eventually shapes the quality of your visible actions. If bitterness is repeatedly welcomed in silence, harshness eventually appears in speech. If envy is allowed to grow unnoticed, gratitude quietly disappears. If self-indulgence remains unchallenged, discipline weakens across every area of life. What happens within the mind deserves just as much examination as what happens before the eyes of others. As evening arrives, let the closing of the day become the beginning of your most valuable conversation. Withdraw from distraction for a short time and review your conduct carefully. Move through the day from beginning to end without rushing. Recall the moments when your judgment remained steady. Recall the moments when emotion briefly overruled wisdom. Notice where unnecessary desire shaped a decision. Notice where fear delayed a duty. Notice where kindness was withheld, despite having every opportunity to offer it. Observe these moments without inventing excuses and without condemning yourself. Simply tell yourself the truth. When you identify an error, do not end your examination there. Ask what belief produced that action. Every repeated behavior grows from a repeated judgment. If impatience continually appears, investigate the expectation feeding it. If dishonesty repeatedly enters your speech, examine the fear that encourages concealment. If resentment returns each day, uncover the attachment that keeps demanding reality become different from what it is. Correcting behavior without correcting judgment is like trimming branches while leaving unhealthy roots untouched. There is no value in remembering your failures if memory becomes nothing more than self-punishment. The purpose of reflection is improvement. Once an error has been clearly understood, determine one practical correction for tomorrow. Keep that correction simple enough to practice faithfully. Resolve to listen more carefully before answering. Resolve to complete one difficult responsibility without delay. Resolve to speak honestly even when honesty feels uncomfortable. Great character is not built through dramatic promises, It is shaped through small acts of consistency, repeated over many days. You will notice that this discipline gradually changes your relationship with success and failure. Success no longer inflates your pride because you remain aware of work still requiring attention. Failure no longer destroys your confidence because you understand that mistakes have become teachers rather than permanent identities. Self-examination creates stability because it replaces emotional extremes with steady learning. Every day becomes useful regardless of external outcomes when every experience contributes to stronger judgment. One danger deserves special attention. Never confuse harshness toward yourself with discipline. Honest examination requires firmness but not cruelty. A person who constantly insults himself weakens the very spirit needed for improvement. Speak to yourself truthfully rather than violently. Admit faults plainly. Correct them diligently. Then continue the work without unnecessary regret. The disciplined mind spends little time grieving over mistakes once their lesson has been learned. It returns quickly to present responsibility. Notice also how daily examination changes your relationships. You become slower to accuse because you recognize how often your own perceptions require correction. You become more patient because you remember your own imperfections. You become less eager to seek praise because your primary concern shifts toward inward integrity rather than outward approval. These changes happen quietly. Others may notice them before you do. They arise not from attempting to appear virtuous, but from repeatedly examining whether your life truly reflects virtue. Many people hope that wisdom will arrive suddenly through one powerful realization. Character rarely develops that way. It grows through faithful attention given to ordinary days. Every morning offers another opportunity to establish intention. Every conversation provides another chance to observe yourself honestly. Every evening invites another careful review. The steady repetition of these practices slowly reshapes the entire person. What once required great effort gradually becomes natural because reason has replaced habit as the guide of conduct. Do not postpone this work while waiting for easier circumstances. The present day contains everything necessary for self-examination. You already possess thoughts worthy of inspection, choices worthy of evaluation, words worthy of review, and habits worthy of correction. Tomorrow will offer different situations but the same responsibility. Delay serves only the part of the mind that wishes to remain unchanged. Remember that no external achievement can compensate for neglected character. You may gain recognition while remaining impatient. You may accumulate possessions while remaining dishonest. You may receive admiration while remaining governed by vanity. None of these accomplishments strengthen the inner life. Only disciplined examination followed by deliberate correction produces lasting improvement. Character grows where truth is welcomed daily and excuses are quietly dismissed. Your life is being shaped even now by what you repeatedly permit within yourself. Every unchecked habit gains strength. Every examined habit loses some of its hidden authority. Each day you either become more attentive to your own conduct or more comfortable living without reflection. There is no neutral ground. The soul is always moving toward greater discipline or greater carelessness according to the habits you nourish. When you finally lie down at the end of the day, let your greatest satisfaction come from knowing that you did not hide from yourself. You met your own thoughts with honesty. You measured your actions against reason rather than convenience. You accepted responsibility where responsibility belonged. You discovered places requiring improvement without surrendering to discouragement. That quiet integrity is worth more than the approval of strangers because it cannot be taken from you by changing fortune. Continue this practice tomorrow and the day after that, not because perfection waits at the end of the journey, but because the examined life is itself the path toward freedom. Every sincere act of self-examination strengthens the part of you that chooses instead of merely reacts. Every honest correction weakens the rule of impulse. Every disciplined day builds a character that remains steady when circumstances become uncertain. In that steady character you will discover a form of peace that no changing event can either grant or remove, because it has been patiently built through the daily work of examining yourself with unwavering honesty. Number 5. Endure discomfort willingly until fear loses its imagined authority. You have been taught to escape discomfort as quickly as possible. The moment your mind feels resistance, you search for relief. When a difficult conversation approaches, you postpone it. When a demanding responsibility appears, you distract yourself. When uncertainty enters your life, you seek reassurance before taking another step. At first this seems harmless because relief arrives for a moment. Yet every escape quietly teaches your mind the same lesson. It teaches that discomfort is dangerous. It teaches that unease must always be avoided. It teaches that fear deserves immediate obedience. This lesson becomes the hidden ruler of your life. And from that point forward, your choices are no longer directed by reason, but by the constant pursuit of psychological safety. Look honestly at the opportunities you have abandoned because they required temporary discomfort. Consider the words left unspoken because honesty felt difficult. Consider the responsibilities delayed because effort demanded more than convenience wished to give. Consider the relationships weakened because silence seemed easier than truth. None of these moments were controlled by external force. They were governed by a single inward decision that discomfort must never be endured. That judgment deserves examination because it has shaped far more of your life than you may realize. Discomfort is not your enemy. It is often the place where character becomes visible. A peaceful mind is not one that never experiences difficulty. It is one that refuses to abandon its principles when difficulty appears. Anyone can remain calm when circumstances cooperate with personal preference. The true measure of inner discipline appears only when life refuses to arrange itself according to your wishes. That is the moment when you discover whether reason governs your choices or whether fear still commands your obedience. Fear survives because it is rarely questioned through experience. The mind predicts unbearable hardship, and before reality has the opportunity to prove otherwise, you retreat. Every retreat strengthens the prediction. Every avoidance convinces you that the danger was real simply because you never remained present long enough to discover its limits. Thus, fear builds authority through your own cooperation. It becomes powerful not because it possesses great strength, but because it remains unchallenged. There is a profound difference between pain and resistance. Pain may arrive through illness, disappointment, loss, or physical effort. Resistance is the additional struggle created when the mind declares that such experiences should not exist. Pain belongs to circumstances. Resistance belongs to judgment. While you cannot always prevent the first, you possess great influence over the second. Many burdens become heavier because the mind continues arguing against realities that have already arrived. Such arguments exhaust the spirit while accomplishing nothing. A disciplined life asks something difficult from you. It asks that you remain present with temporary discomfort, instead of immediately seeking escape. This does not mean welcoming suffering for its own sake. It means refusing to surrender your judgment simply because an experience feels unpleasant. The mind must learn that discomfort is a condition to be understood rather than an order to be obeyed. Once this lesson becomes established, fear begins losing the exaggerated authority it once held over your decisions. Observe how quickly your habits attempt to negotiate with difficulty. The mind says that one more day of delay will make the task easier. It promises that courage will appear naturally if you wait long enough. It suggests that avoiding discomfort today will somehow prepare you to face greater challenges tomorrow. None of these promises withstand careful examination. Delay rarely strengthens courage. More often it strengthens hesitation. The task remains while confidence quietly diminishes. The burden grows larger because imagination continues adding weight that reality never demanded. Begin each morning by choosing one small act that requires deliberate discipline. Do not choose something dramatic. Choose something that reminds your mind that comfort is not your ruler. Complete an important duty before seeking entertainment. Rise promptly instead of negotiating with laziness. Finish an obligation that has been quietly postponed. Speak a necessary truth with calm respect, even if silence would feel easier. These simple actions train the will to act according to reason rather than preference. The value lies not in the difficulty itself, but in the habit of choosing principle above immediate comfort. As the day unfolds, notice how often your attention becomes occupied by the desire to avoid mild inconvenience. Waiting in line becomes an irritation. A change of plans becomes a personal offense. Constructive criticism feels like an attack upon your worth. These moments appear insignificant, yet they reveal the condition of your inner discipline. A person unable to endure small discomforts will struggle greatly when genuine hardship arrives. Daily patience prepares the mind for larger tests by proving that temporary unease need not disturb steady judgment. There are moments when the body feels tired, the emotions become unsettled, and the easiest path seems deeply attractive. During such moments, ask yourself a different question than you normally ask. Instead of asking how to eliminate discomfort, ask how to remain honorable within discomfort. This single change transforms the entire situation. Your attention moves away from escape and toward conduct. The experience may remain difficult, but your purpose becomes clear. You no longer seek perfect comfort. You seek faithful character. Many people unknowingly become servants of anticipation rather than servants of reason. They suffer more while imagining future discomfort than while actually experiencing present difficulty. The approaching challenge appears enormous because the mind continually enlarges it through repeated contemplation. Yet once the moment finally arrives, reality often proves simpler than imagination predicted. This should teach an important lesson. The imagination frequently exaggerates burdens that direct experience later reduces. Remember this whenever the future begins demanding fear before evidence. A practical discipline can weaken this habit. Whenever you notice yourself avoiding an important responsibility, move toward it in measured steps instead of waiting for confidence to appear. If a conversation must occur, begin it. If an apology is owed, offer it sincerely. If a difficult task has remained unfinished, work upon it for a short period without demanding immediate perfection. Action interrupts fearful prediction because reality replaces speculation. Each completed step teaches the mind that many feared experiences can indeed be endured without surrendering integrity. Another powerful practice is learning to remain silent before reacting to discomfort. Someone speaks unfairly. Your first impulse urges immediate defense. Pause instead. Notice the rising emotion without allowing it to become your commander. Ask whether your response will improve the situation or merely satisfy wounded pride. This brief restraint strengthens self-command because it proves that emotion need not dictate action. The discomfort of remaining composed becomes an exercise through which character quietly grows stronger. The same principle applies to physical inconvenience. When weather becomes unpleasant, when fatigue visits, when ordinary hardships interrupt routine, observe how quickly the mind begins complaining. Complaints rarely reduce difficulty. They often increase it by adding resentment to circumstances already beyond immediate control. Train yourself occasionally to accept small inconveniences without protest. Walk through rain without treating it as injustice. Perform necessary work despite temporary tiredness. Wait patiently without demanding that every moment satisfy personal preference. These experiences remind the mind that comfort is desirable but never essential for virtuous action. Do not mistake endurance for stubbornness. True endurance remains guided by wisdom. It does not seek unnecessary suffering, nor does it ignore legitimate responsibilities toward health or prudence. Its purpose is different. It refuses to allow temporary discomfort to overthrow sound judgment. Wisdom continues asking what action best serves justice, courage, moderation, and reason, regardless of emotional resistance. Endurance exists to protect these qualities when easier alternatives invite compromise. Examine carefully the promises fear continues making to you. It claims that avoiding today's challenge will preserve peace. Yet observe what actually happens. The postponed responsibility continues occupying your thoughts. The avoided conversation grows heavier with time. The neglected duty quietly follows you into every moment of rest. The relief purchased through avoidance never lasts because it depends upon refusing reality rather than facing it. Temporary comfort becomes lasting unrest. Contrast this with the experience of meeting discomfort directly. The difficult conversation may create brief unease, yet afterward clarity replaces uncertainty. The demanding responsibility requires effort, yet completion brings quiet confidence. The disciplined decision may feel uncomfortable at first, but afterward self-respect grows stronger because you have acted according to principle rather than fear. One path offers immediate ease followed by lingering weakness. The other offers temporary difficulty followed by lasting stability. Your character is shaped less by extraordinary moments than by ordinary acts of endurance repeated consistently. Every time you remain patient instead of becoming irritated, you strengthen restraint. Every time you complete a responsibility despite reluctance, you strengthen diligence. Every time you tell the truth despite possible discomfort, you strengthen integrity. Character does not appear suddenly. It accumulates through countless decisions in which reason quietly triumphs over convenience. Notice also how fear frequently disguises itself as careful thinking. It argues that waiting is wisdom when waiting is actually hesitation. It presents avoidance as caution when avoidance is simply unwillingness to endure uncertainty. It encourages endless preparation instead of meaningful action. Learn to distinguish thoughtful planning from endless postponement. Reason prepares in order to act. Fear prepares in order to delay. Their outward appearance may resemble one another, yet their purpose differs completely. As evening approaches, review the moments when discomfort influenced your choices. Ask yourself where you surrendered too quickly. Identify situations where temporary unease persuaded you to abandon a worthwhile action. Then identify moments where you remained faithful despite emotional resistance. Study both carefully. One reveals habits requiring correction. The other reveals strengths deserving continued practice. Reflection transforms daily experience into lasting instruction. Never despise small victories over fear. Remaining calm during a difficult conversation, completing an unpleasant task without complaint, accepting correction without resentment. These acts may appear ordinary, yet they reshape the governing habits of the mind. Fear loses influence gradually through repeated contradiction. Every disciplined response weakens the false belief that discomfort possesses unlimited power over you. Another valuable practice is choosing voluntary simplicity from time to time. Occasionally refuse an unnecessary luxury. Occasionally accept a less convenient path without resentment. Occasionally perform useful work without seeking recognition. Such choices remind the mind that well-being depends far more upon character than upon constant pleasure. A person accustomed to modest conditions becomes less vulnerable to changing fortune because contentment no longer depends upon continuous comfort. You will eventually discover that much of what once frightened you has lost its power, not because the world became easier, but because your judgments became stronger. The situations remain much the same. Responsibilities continue. Uncertainty remains part of life. Difficult people still exist. Yet something within you has changed. You no longer assume that discomfort signals danger. You recognize it as one more opportunity to practice self-command. This transformation cannot be borrowed from another person. No speech can give it to you permanently. No book can complete the work on your behalf. It grows only through repeated willingness to remain steady while the mind insists upon retreat. Each day presents new opportunities to strengthen this willingness. Each challenge becomes material for training rather than evidence of defeat. Life itself becomes the school in which endurance is patiently developed. Do not expect fear to disappear before acting wisely. Fear often remains present while courage is being exercised. Waiting for complete emotional certainty means placing your life under the authority of changing feelings. Instead, allow reason to move first. Let action demonstrate what emotion has doubted. Confidence frequently follows disciplined conduct rather than preceding it. The mind learns trust through faithful experience, not through endless reassurance. Remember that nothing external can compel you to abandon virtue. Circumstances may become difficult, bodies may grow weary, plans may fail, opinions may turn against you. Yet your capacity to choose honesty over deception, patience over anger, justice over resentment, and discipline over indulgence remains available in every moment. This realization gives endurance its deepest meaning. You are not merely surviving discomfort. You are preserving the highest part of yourself despite discomfort. When tomorrow arrives, do not ask whether the day will be comfortable. Ask whether you will remain governed by reason, regardless of what the day contains. Welcome each opportunity to strengthen self-command through faithful action. Accept temporary unease without granting it authority over your choices. Continue practicing until fear loses the false importance your imagination once assigned to it. Then you will discover that the strongest mind is not the one that never feels discomfort, but the one that has learned through steady discipline that discomfort is incapable of ruling a character firmly established in reason and virtue. Number 6. Release every outcome beyond your power without inner resistance. You spend much of your life carrying burdens that were never placed in your hands. You carry tomorrow before it arrives. You carry the opinions of strangers as though they were your own responsibility. You carry the choices of other people as though your peace depends upon directing them. You carry the results of every effort before the effort has even been completed. Then you wonder why your mind feels exhausted. The weight is not coming only from life itself. Much of it comes from trying to possess what was never yours to govern. The deepest form of anxiety is often not fear of effort. It is attachment to results that remain outside your authority. You are willing to work, but you also demand certainty. You are willing to speak honestly, but only if honesty guarantees approval. You are willing to act with discipline, but only if discipline produces immediate success. Hidden beneath these conditions is the belief that your peace should depend upon outcomes you cannot command. This belief quietly creates endless conflict because reality has never agreed to obey such demands. A rational mind learns to distinguish between commitment and attachment. Commitment belongs to your character. Attachment reaches beyond your character and attempts to possess what belongs to changing circumstances. Commitment says that you will act with integrity regardless of the result. Attachment says that your integrity depends upon receiving the result you imagined. One strengthens the soul, the other weakens it because it places your inner condition under the control of forces that never belonged to you. Consider how many sleepless nights have been created not by present events, but by future possibilities. The work has already been completed, yet the mind continues negotiating with outcomes that remain unwritten. The conversation has already taken place, yet you replay every sentence hoping to rewrite what can no longer be changed. The decision has already been made, yet you continue arguing with possibilities that no longer exist. None of this effort improves reality. It only prolongs resistance against what has already passed beyond your influence. Many people believe that constant concern demonstrates responsibility. They confuse endless mental struggle with genuine care, yet responsibility ends where your power ends. Beyond that point begins acceptance. This acceptance is not indifference, it is clear judgment. You continue giving your best effort where action remains possible. Once action has been completed, you release your demand to supervise every consequence. This preserves energy for the next duty instead of wasting it upon events that no longer answer to your will. Look carefully at your relationships. Much of the sorrow within them begins when you attempt to govern another person's thoughts instead of your own conduct. You hope they will understand your intentions perfectly. You expect gratitude whenever you act generously. You desire loyalty according to your own standards. These wishes may appear reasonable, yet none of them belong entirely to your authority. Another person's judgment remains their own. Their response grows from their own character rather than your preference. If you place your peace inside their reactions, you surrender the government of your inner life to circumstances that cannot faithfully serve you. This does not mean withdrawing from meaningful relationships. It means entering them with wiser expectations. Speak honestly because honesty belongs to your character. Offer kindness because kindness belongs to your character. Keep promises because faithfulness belongs to your character. Whether these actions are appreciated immediately is another matter altogether. Let your satisfaction arise from living according to principle rather than from controlling another person's response. In doing so, you preserve both your dignity and your freedom. The same discipline belongs to your work. Perform every task with full attention. Prepare carefully, learn continuously, correct mistakes willingly, then allow the result to unfold according to causes larger than yourself. Success may arrive, failure may arrive. Recognition may come late or not at all. These possibilities do not determine whether your labor possessed value. The worth of your effort is measured first by the quality of the mind that performed it. External reward may accompany good work, but it cannot become the foundation upon which your peace rests. Observe how attachment quietly disguises itself as ambition. There is nothing wrong with striving toward worthy goals. The danger appears when goals become conditions for self-respect. You begin believing that unless the outcome matches your expectations, your efforts were meaningless. Such thinking destroys contentment because no achievement remains secure forever. Every success eventually passes, every position changes, every possession may disappear. If your identity depends upon these shifting things, your stability disappears alongside them. A disciplined person anchors identity somewhere far more durable. He measures himself by whether he has acted with wisdom, justice, restraint, and courage. These qualities remain available regardless of fortune. Even during apparent failure, virtue can remain complete. Even during public misunderstanding, honesty can remain untouched. Even when plans collapse, reason can continue directing action. This understanding frees the mind from demanding impossible guarantees before it allows itself to remain at peace. Each morning, remind yourself that today's responsibilities belong to you, but today's results do not belong entirely to you. Your responsibility is to think carefully, speak truthfully, work diligently, and conduct yourself honorably. Beyond these duties lies a wider order that cannot be managed through worry. Begin the day by accepting this distinction before circumstances attempt to blur it. Doing so prepares the mind to act fully without becoming imprisoned by expectation. As the hours pass, repeatedly ask where your attention has wandered. Has it remained upon your present responsibility, or has it drifted toward imagined outcomes beyond your reach? Whenever you discover yourself attempting to control what lies outside your authority, gently return your attention to the action immediately before you. This return must happen many times each day because the mind naturally reaches towards certainty. Discipline consists not in never wandering but in faithfully returning whenever wandering is discovered. Notice how often disappointment grows from hidden expectations that were never examined. You expect every effort to be rewarded quickly. You expect every relationship to remain unchanged. You expect every plan to unfold smoothly. When reality follows a different course, frustration appears. Yet the frustration does not arise because reality violated justice. It arises because expectation quietly declared itself to be certainty. Examine these expectations before they harden into demands. Most lose their force when viewed honestly. There is a valuable exercise whenever uncertainty begins troubling the mind. Ask yourself what remains yours regardless of the outcome. If a meeting succeeds or fails, honesty remains yours. If recognition comes or does not come, diligence remains yours. If another person approves or criticizes, fairness remains yours. Continue naming the qualities that no external circumstance can remove unless you willingly abandon them. This practice gradually shifts your attention away from unstable conditions toward enduring principles. Another discipline requires accepting completed events without continuing inward argument. Once something has already happened, your judgment determines whether suffering continues unnecessarily. You may learn from the event. You may repair mistakes where possible. You may change future conduct. Yet you cannot transform yesterday through endless dissatisfaction. Every hour spent resisting the unchangeable weakens your ability to fulfill today's obligations. Wisdom releases what cannot be recalled and strengthens what still remains within reach. When plans fail, examine your first reaction carefully. The undisciplined mind immediately asks why life has opposed its wishes. The disciplined mind asks what virtue the present situation now requires. Perhaps patience is needed. Perhaps flexibility is required. Perhaps courage must replace disappointment. Every changed circumstance becomes new material for character rather than evidence that life has become unfair. This attitude transforms setbacks into opportunities for disciplined response. Do not confuse acceptance with passivity. Acceptance concerns reality as it presently exists. Action concerns what remains possible within that reality. A wise person accepts the facts without complaint and then immediately asks what useful step belongs to him now. He does not waste strength denying what has already occurred. He directs strength toward the duties that still invite meaningful effort. Acceptance and action therefore belong together. One clears the mind, the other fulfills responsibility. Your speech also reveals where attachment continues hiding. Listen carefully whenever you say that everything has been ruined because one desired outcome failed to appear. Listen whenever you insist that happiness cannot exist unless circumstances improve according to your plan. Such statements reveal that your peace has been entrusted to unstable conditions. Replace these conclusions with language rooted in reason. Acknowledge disappointment honestly while refusing to exaggerate its meaning. Speak about facts rather than despair. The words you repeatedly choose quietly educate your own judgment. As evening approaches, examine not only what happened, but also what you attempted to control throughout the day. Ask yourself whether your attention remained fixed upon your own conduct or wandered toward governing events beyond your reach. Notice where anxiety grew because attachment quietly replaced discipline. Then ask how tomorrow's effort can remain wholehearted while tomorrow's outcomes are left free to unfold according to reality rather than personal demand. There will be times when releasing attachment feels uncomfortable. The mind often believes that constant worry proves dedication. Yet observe the difference between worry and careful action. Worry circles endlessly around imagined consequences. Careful action completes the next responsibility with full attention. Worry drains strength before it can be used. Careful action conserves strength for meaningful work. One leaves you exhausted without progress. The other builds character regardless of external results. Another useful practice is learning to appreciate effort without immediately calculating reward. Complete worthy work because it deserves completion. Offer help because another person genuinely needs it. Study because understanding improves judgment. Exercise discipline because discipline strengthens character. Let these actions possess value independent of applause or recognition. When goodness depends upon reward, it becomes negotiation rather than virtue. When goodness stands upon principle alone, it becomes unshakable. There is quiet freedom in realizing that you never possessed control over every outcome to begin with. You are no longer required to carry impossible responsibilities. You are no longer forced to predict every consequence before acting wisely. You are no longer burdened with directing every opinion, every circumstance, or every future event. Instead, you become fully responsible for something both smaller and greater. Smaller because it concerns only your own choices, greater because those choices define the quality of your entire life. As this understanding deepens, gratitude also changes. You stop demanding that reality fulfill every preference before appreciating what has already been given. You become thankful for the opportunity to practice virtue today, regardless of today's changing fortunes. Every ordinary duty becomes enough. Every honest effort becomes meaningful. Every challenge becomes another chance to exercise reason instead of attachment. Gratitude rooted in character remains steady because it no longer depends upon perfect circumstances. Remember that much of human suffering begins by asking life to provide guarantees that life has never promised. No promise exists that effort will always succeed. No promise exists that affection will always be returned. No promise exists that plans will remain unchanged. Yet another promise quietly remains available every day. You possess the opportunity to govern your own conduct with integrity regardless of changing outcomes. This opportunity is sufficient for a meaningful life because it places the highest good where changing fortune cannot easily reach it. From this day forward, let every action be complete in itself. Work carefully because careful work reflects discipline. Speak truthfully because truth belongs to justice. Accept correction because humility strengthens wisdom. Meet uncertainty because courage grows only where certainty is absent. Then release every consequence that extends beyond your rightful authority. Refuse to continue carrying burdens that were never yours. Refuse to argue inwardly against realities already established. Refuse to place your peace inside outcomes that remain forever uncertain. You will discover that this practice does not make life smaller. It makes life clearer. The mind becomes quieter because it no longer attempts to supervise the entire world. Energy once consumed by endless expectation becomes available for faithful action. Anxiety gradually loses its grip because it can no longer feed upon impossible demands. What remains is a steady willingness to fulfill each present duty with excellence while allowing the future to unfold according to causes beyond personal command. In that quiet discipline you find a freedom that cannot be purchased through success, protected by reputation or guaranteed by fortune because it has been built upon the only foundation that truly belongs to you, the deliberate government of your own character. Number 7. Practice calm attention until your mind obeys reason completely. Your mind is constantly being invited in different directions. Every sound asks for your attention. Every opinion competes for your judgment. Every fear demands immediate consideration. Every desire promises satisfaction if only you will follow it without delay. If you never decide where your attention belongs, the world will decide for you. A scattered mind soon becomes a troubled mind because it no longer chooses what deserves its notice. It simply reacts to whatever appears first. This is not freedom. It is quiet surrender disguised as ordinary living. The quality of your life follows the quality of your attention. Wherever your attention remains for long enough, your character slowly begins to resemble it. A mind that continually dwells upon imagined insults gradually becomes suspicious. A mind that constantly searches for reasons to complain eventually discovers them everywhere. A mind that repeatedly returns to reason becomes measured even when circumstances remain difficult. Your attention is never idle. It is always shaping the person you are becoming. Most people believe that attention is something that simply happens. They assume that whatever enters the mind deserves equal consideration. They do not notice how often they permit passing impressions to occupy the same place that should belong to careful judgment. Every unnecessary distraction steals a portion of your capacity to live according to reason. Every careless reaction weakens the habit of deliberate choice. Without discipline, the mind becomes like a house whose doors remain open to every passing visitor regardless of intention. There is a quiet power in learning to remain mentally present with what truly deserves your effort. Presence does not mean escaping thought. It means directing thought toward what belongs to your responsibility, rather than allowing it to wander through endless speculation. A disciplined mind does not chase every possibility. It examines the duty before it with steady attention. This habit appears simple, yet it transforms the entire quality of daily life because it restores order where confusion once ruled. Notice how often your attention abandons the present task before the task itself becomes difficult. While working, the mind begins imagining future problems. During conversation, it rehearses yesterday's mistakes. While resting, it worries about tomorrow's uncertainties. In every case, the present moment is neglected, not because it lacks importance, but because the mind has become accustomed to wandering wherever impulse directs it. This habit creates constant dissatisfaction because your life can only be lived where your body already stands, never where your imagination continues drifting. Calm attention begins with accepting that your mind requires training just as surely as your character does. You would never expect physical strength to develop without repeated effort, yet many people hope for inner steadiness without ever practicing disciplined attention. They become discouraged whenever restless thoughts appear, forgetting that an untrained mind naturally follows habit rather than wisdom. Improvement begins the moment you stop expecting effortless clarity and begin practicing deliberate focus. Each morning before entering the demands of the day, spend several quiet moments gathering your attention instead of scattering it. Do not immediately search for messages, opinions, or distractions. Sit with your own judgment while it remains undisturbed. Ask yourself what responsibilities truly belong to today. Name them clearly. Let your attention rest upon those duties instead of every possible event that might arise. This practice establishes direction before confusion has an opportunity to take command. Throughout the day, protect your attention with the same care that you would protect something of great value, because that is precisely what it is. Every unnecessary argument invites your mind away from useful work. Every habit of endless comparison weakens satisfaction with honest effort. Every repeated complaint consumes attention that could have been invested in meaningful action. Ask yourself regularly whether the object currently holding your attention deserves such influence over your character. When an unpleasant event interrupts your plans, observe the first movement of your attention. Does it immediately become consumed by frustration, or does it remain available for thoughtful response? The first moments after disappointment often determine the entire course of your conduct. If attention becomes captive to emotion, judgment quickly follows. If attention remains steady, reason retains the opportunity to guide your next action. This brief interval deserves careful cultivation because many unnecessary mistakes begin when attention abandons discipline. You do not strengthen attention by forcing the mind into silence. You strengthen it by repeatedly bringing it back whenever it wanders without purpose. The wandering itself is not failure. Remaining lost without noticing is the greater danger. Every return becomes an act of self-government. Each time you recognize distraction and calmly direct yourself back toward your proper duty, you strengthen the ruling part of your character. These quiet victories accumulate even though no one else can see them. Pay close attention to the difference between observation and interpretation. You may observe that someone spoke briefly. Interpretation immediately claims they intended disrespect. You may observe that a plan changed unexpectedly. Interpretation insists your efforts have become meaningless. Calm attention pauses before interpretation becomes belief. It allows facts to remain separate from assumptions until reason has completed its work. Many emotional disturbances disappear once this distinction becomes habitual. The disciplined mind also learns to remain fully present during ordinary responsibilities. Washing a dish, answering correspondence, completing honest labor, listening carefully during conversation, and fulfilling promises may appear unremarkable. Yet these moments provide daily opportunities to strengthen attention. When the mind remains entirely devoted to the task before it, restlessness gradually loses influence. Ordinary duties become exercises through which concentration quietly matures. One reason anxiety grows so quickly is that attention repeatedly abandons reality in favor of imagined futures. It rehearses conversations that have not occurred. It calculates consequences that cannot yet be known. It invents difficulties before evidence appears. Meanwhile, today's responsibilities remain unfinished because today's attention has been borrowed by tomorrow's uncertainty. Calm attention restores balance by asking one simple question: what requires my best judgment at this very moment? Not later, not yesterday, now. Another practice deserves faithful repetition. Whenever strong emotion arises, delay your conclusion. Do not delay necessary action, but delay certainty. Tell yourself that emotion may be reporting discomfort without accurately explaining its cause. Continue observing before deciding. Many conflicts have been created because temporary emotion received permanent authority over judgment. A calm mind does not reject feeling. It simply refuses to allow feeling alone to determine what is true. Notice also how your attention behaves during success. Many people remain disciplined only while facing hardship. Success often encourages carelessness. Praise invites pride. Achievement invites complacency. Attention drifts away from virtue toward admiration. Remain watchful even when circumstances appear favorable. Continue asking whether your character is improving rather than whether your reputation is expanding. The disciplined person measures progress through the quality of conduct, not through changing applause. Conversation provides another valuable field of practice. While another person speaks, observe how often your attention begins preparing its reply before understanding has been completed. The undisciplined mind listens only long enough to defend itself or prove its own position. Calm attention remains fully present. It seeks understanding before response. This habit not only improves relationships but also trains humility because it reminds you that truth is discovered more often through careful listening than through hurried speech. Guard yourself against mental haste. Many poor judgments arise because attention rushes toward conclusion before sufficient evidence exists. Haste promises efficiency but frequently produces confusion. Slow your judgment without becoming inactive. Give reason enough time to examine what impulse immediately wishes to decide. This measured approach prevents countless unnecessary regrets because wisdom requires patience while impulse demands speed. As the day continues, practice returning your attention whenever it becomes trapped inside matters beyond your rightful authority. Perhaps your thoughts become consumed by another person's opinion. Perhaps they circle endlessly around an uncertain future. Perhaps they revisit an event already finished. Recognize these moments without irritation, then gently redirect yourself toward the duty immediately available. This repeated return becomes one of the strongest disciplines you can cultivate because it weakens the habit of mental wandering. Another danger appears when attention becomes attached to constant stimulation. The mind gradually loses its ability to remain quietly focused upon meaningful work. Every pause feels uncomfortable. Every moment of silence invites distraction. Such habits make inner discipline increasingly difficult because attention begins expecting continuous novelty rather than sustained purpose. Protect yourself from this condition by intentionally spending short periods with nothing except your own thoughts and your present responsibility. Learn once again that quietness need not become emptiness. Examine also the relationship between attention and speech. Words often escape before attention has fully considered their effect. Harsh remarks, careless promises, unnecessary criticism, and exaggerated complaints frequently begin with unattended impulses. Before speaking, allow attention to stand beside your words. Ask whether what you are about to say reflects justice, restraint, and truth. If not, silence may serve virtue more faithfully than speech. As evening approaches, review where your attention spent the greatest portion of the day. Did it remain devoted to worthy responsibilities, or was it repeatedly captured by resentment, comparison, distraction, or unnecessary speculation? This review should not become a source of guilt but a source of instruction. Wherever attention repeatedly travels, character quietly follows. By observing these patterns honestly, tomorrow's attention can be guided more wisely. Do not expect mastery after only a few days of practice. A lifetime of scattered habits cannot be replaced through brief effort. Yet every deliberate return strengthens your capacity for reason. The work may appear invisible, but its effects gradually become unmistakable. Reactions become slower and more thoughtful. Decisions become clearer. Complaints become fewer. Conversations become calmer. Difficulties no longer seize complete possession of the mind because attention has learned to remain under disciplined guidance. Eventually, you will notice something remarkable. External circumstances continue changing, yet your inward steadiness no longer changes with equal force. Praise arrives without inflating pride. Criticism arrives without destroying confidence. Delay no longer provokes immediate frustration. Uncertainty no longer demands endless prediction. This transformation does not occur because life has become easier. It occurs because your attention has stopped serving every passing impression and has begun serving reason instead. Remember that attention is one of the few possessions truly entrusted to you. Fortune may alter your circumstances, other people may alter their opinions, time may alter your body, yet in every waking hour you retain the opportunity to direct your attention according to wisdom rather than impulse. This opportunity deserves your deepest respect because everything else in your inner life depends upon it. From this day forward, become the careful guardian of where your mind rests. Let every distraction prove its worth before receiving your attention. Let every impression wait until reason has examined it. Let every duty receive your full presence instead of divided effort. Continue returning whenever your thoughts wander beyond what belongs to your present responsibility. Continue strengthening this quiet discipline day after day until calm attention becomes your natural condition. When attention finally learns to remain where reason places it, your mind no longer follows every passing emotion or restless impulse. It becomes governed by deliberate judgment, steady purpose, and unwavering self-command. In that condition, you discover a freedom that no external disturbance can easily overthrow, because the ruler of your inner life is no longer impulse, fear, or distraction, but reason itself. Number 8. Choose virtue above comfort whenever anxiety demands your surrender. Anxiety often speaks with the voice of protection, yet it frequently asks you to abandon the very qualities that make your life honorable. It urges silence when honesty is required. It recommends retreat when courage is needed. It encourages compromise when integrity should remain firm. It promises temporary relief if only you will step away from what is right. Many people accept this bargain without recognizing its true cost. They gain a brief moment of comfort while quietly surrendering a portion of their character. By repeating this exchange often enough, they eventually discover that the greatest source of unrest is not the anxiety they tried to escape, but the person they became while escaping it. You must understand the difference between comfort and goodness. Comfort is a changing feeling. It appears and disappears according to circumstances beyond your command. Goodness belongs to your choices. It remains available whether the day brings ease or hardship. When you confuse these two things, your entire life becomes unstable. You begin measuring success by the absence of discomfort instead of the presence of virtue. From that moment onward, every difficult duty appears as an enemy rather than an opportunity to strengthen your character. There will always be moments when anxiety presents you with two paths. One path feels easier because it avoids immediate tension. The other demands discipline because it asks you to remain faithful to principle despite emotional resistance. The undisciplined mind almost always chooses the easier path because it mistakes immediate relief for lasting wisdom. Yet relief gained through abandoning virtue never remains peaceful for long. The conscience remembers what fear persuaded you to forget. Think about the moments you regret most deeply. They are rarely the moments when life became difficult. More often, they are the moments when you knew the right action but allowed fear to determine your conduct. You remained silent although truth deserved your voice. You acted against your better judgment because you desired acceptance more than integrity. You neglected an important responsibility because temporary ease appeared more attractive than disciplined effort. The pain that follows such decisions does not arise from external events alone. It comes from recognizing that you acted beneath the standard your own reason had already established. A life directed by virtue begins with a simple but demanding question. What is the right action regardless of how I presently feel? This question immediately changes the direction of your attention. Instead of asking what will remove anxiety most quickly, you begin asking what justice requires. Instead of asking what protects your comfort, you ask what strengthens your character. Feelings continue to exist, but they no longer occupy the highest place in your decision-making. Reason assumes its rightful authority. Each morning remind yourself that the purpose of the coming day is not to remain comfortable. Its purpose is to remain honorable. Difficult people may appear. Unexpected obstacles may interrupt your plans. Uncertainty may accompany important decisions. None of these experiences prevent you from practicing honesty, patience, restraint, or courage. They simply provide the conditions in which those qualities become visible. Without challenge, virtue remains only an intention. Through challenge, it becomes reality. As you prepare for your responsibilities, identify one situation where comfort is likely to tempt you away from principle. Perhaps you know that an honest conversation must take place. Perhaps an apology has been delayed because pride resists humility. Perhaps an important duty has been postponed because effort appears unpleasant. Do not wait for motivation to remove your hesitation. Decide now that virtue will govern your conduct, even if anxiety remains present. This decision creates direction before emotion begins arguing for compromise. Throughout the day, observe how often anxiety attempts to disguise surrender as wisdom. It tells you that this is not the right moment to speak truth. It insists that another day will provide better conditions for disciplined action. It encourages endless preparation while discouraging meaningful effort. Listen carefully to these arguments without immediately accepting them. Ask whether they arise from thoughtful judgment or from unwillingness to experience temporary discomfort. Reason becomes stronger whenever it exposes fear wearing the clothing of caution. Your character is not formed during moments of perfect certainty. It is formed while acting faithfully despite uncertainty. Waiting until every doubt disappears means allowing emotional conditions to determine moral action. Such waiting rarely ends because complete certainty belongs to very few situations in life. Instead, allow clear principles to guide you where complete confidence cannot. You already know that honesty is better than deception. You already know that justice is better than resentment. You already know that self-restraint is better than indulgence. These truths remain dependable even when feelings become unsettled. Consider your speech carefully. Anxiety often persuades people to exaggerate, conceal, flatter, or accuse because they hope such words will reduce immediate tension. Yet every dishonest sentence weakens trust in your own character. Speak with calm accuracy instead. Say only what you know to be true. Refuse to add unnecessary harshness simply because emotion demands expression. Refuse also to hide necessary truth because discomfort requests silence. Speech governed by virtue protects both dignity and peace even when conversations become difficult. Another place where comfort competes against virtue is within your private thoughts. You may repeatedly imagine yourself as the victim of every disappointment because this story excuses resentment. You may rehearse grievances because anger feels easier than forgiveness. You may indulge self-pity because responsibility appears demanding. Observe these mental habits honestly. They offer emotional comfort without producing genuine strength. Refuse to entertain thoughts that weaken the very qualities you seek to cultivate. Your inner conversation deserves the same discipline as your outward conduct. When disappointment enters your life, ask yourself what virtue the present moment invites. Does it require patience rather than complaint? Does it require courage rather than retreat? Does it require moderation instead of impulsive reaction? Every difficult circumstance quietly presents such opportunities. Anxiety directs attention toward personal discomfort. Reason directs attention toward moral responsibility. The circumstance may remain unchanged, yet your relationship with it becomes entirely different when virtue replaces self-protection as your highest concern. Practice performing good actions without demanding comfortable emotions first. Help another person even if you feel tired. Complete an important obligation even if enthusiasm is absent. Offer fairness even when another person behaves poorly. Keep your word despite inconvenience. These actions gradually teach the mind that goodness depends upon choice rather than feeling. Anxiety loses much of its influence once it discovers that uncomfortable emotions no longer prevent honorable conduct. Do not believe that virtue requires dramatic sacrifices every day. More often it asks for quiet faithfulness in ordinary situations. It asks you to arrive on time because reliability matters. It asks you to admit mistakes because honesty matters. It asks you to refuse gossip because justice matters. It asks you to complete your responsibilities without endless complaint because discipline matters. Great character is assembled through countless ordinary decisions where principle quietly defeats convenience. Examine your relationship with praise as well. Anxiety often seeks approval because approval appears to promise safety. This desire becomes dangerous when it persuades you to abandon conviction in exchange for acceptance. If maintaining another person's approval requires abandoning what reason declares right, the price is already too high. Approval changes according to preference. Virtue remains valuable regardless of public opinion. Never exchange permanent character for temporary applause. There will be occasions when choosing virtue produces immediate difficulty. Honesty may expose misunderstanding. Courage may invite criticism. Justice may require standing apart from popular opinion. Patience may demand enduring another person's unfairness without surrendering your own dignity. Do not interpret these difficulties as evidence that virtue has failed. They often confirm that principle is being tested rather than merely admired. Character proves its worth precisely because it remains steady under pressure. At the end of each day, examine your choices rather than your emotions. Ask where you allowed comfort to direct conduct. Ask where anxiety persuaded you to abandon better judgment. Then notice where you remained faithful despite inward resistance. These moments deserve careful attention because they reveal the gradual strengthening of your character. Every honest review prepares tomorrow's decisions with greater clarity than today's excuses ever could. One valuable practice is to anticipate situations where comfort will attempt to negotiate with your principles. Before entering a difficult meeting, remind yourself that fairness belongs to you regardless of another person's behavior. Before beginning demanding work, remind yourself that diligence remains your responsibility even if the task feels unpleasant. Before entering uncertain circumstances, remind yourself that courage is measured by conduct rather than by the absence of fear. Preparing your judgment beforehand prevents emotion from becoming the first advisor. Understand also that virtue cannot be borrowed from favorable circumstances. If your honesty exists only when truth costs nothing, it remains fragile. If your patience survives only when everyone agrees with you, it remains incomplete. If your courage depends upon guaranteed success, it has not yet matured. Virtue becomes stable only when it continues governing action despite discomfort. This stability is one of the greatest achievements available to the human mind because it places your deepest values beyond the reach of changing fortune. Anxiety repeatedly whispers that preserving comfort is necessary for survival, yet examine your own experience carefully. How many times has protecting comfort left you feeling weaker rather than stronger? How often has avoiding responsibility increased rather than reduced mental burden? How frequently has silence produced greater conflict than honest speech would have created? Reality itself teaches that the easiest choice often carries the heaviest consequences. Reason simply asks you to notice what experience has already been showing you. As your discipline grows, you will discover an unexpected form of confidence. It will not arise because life has become predictable. It will arise because you have stopped measuring yourself by changing circumstances. You know that whatever tomorrow contains, you retain the ability to choose justice over resentment, truth over deception, moderation over excess, and courage over surrender. This realization creates quiet strength because it places the foundation of your life where fortune cannot easily disturb it. Do not seek a future where anxiety never appears. Seek instead a character that no longer bows before it. Anxiety may continue presenting fearful suggestions, yet it cannot force your agreement. It may describe possible failure, yet it cannot command dishonest action. It may announce uncertainty, yet it cannot compel you to abandon discipline. Once you understand this distinction, emotional discomfort loses much of its imagined authority because your choices remain governed by reason rather than feeling. Remember that every day offers countless opportunities to strengthen this habit. Every difficult conversation invites honesty. Every disappointment invites patience. Every temptation invites self-restraint. Every uncertainty invites courage. None of these opportunities require perfect conditions. They require only your willingness to value virtue more highly than immediate ease. The world may continue changing according to causes beyond your control, but the direction of your own character remains entrusted to you. When the day finally comes to its close, let your deepest satisfaction arise from one simple truth. You refused to sell your character for temporary comfort. You allowed reason to govern where anxiety requested surrender. You fulfilled your responsibilities without demanding ideal circumstances. You preserved integrity even when compromise appeared easier. Such victories rarely receive public celebration, yet they shape the inner life more profoundly than any external achievement. They build a mind that gradually becomes impossible to intimidate because it has learned that the highest good does not depend upon comfort, approval, or success. It depends entirely upon choosing virtue again and again until that choice becomes the natural expression of who you are. Number 9. Confront each present moment with steady courage and clear judgment. Most of the battles that exhaust you never take place in the moment you are actually living. They unfold inside a future that has not yet arrived or within a past that cannot be altered. While your body remains here, your attention wanders elsewhere. You rehearse conversations that may never happen. You argue with memories that can no longer answer you. You build fears from possibilities instead of facts. Then you wonder why your strength disappears before the day has even begun. The mind has spent its energy fighting shadows while the only place where action is possible has been quietly neglected. Life does not ask you to govern every hour that may come. It asks you to govern this one. It does not demand that you solve every uncertainty before sunset. It asks whether you will meet the responsibility already standing before you. Yet the undisciplined mind resists this simplicity. It believes that peace depends upon controlling the entire future. It refuses to trust reason unless every outcome has been guaranteed. In this refusal, it creates unnecessary suffering because it abandons the one place where judgment can truly act. The present moment is not merely where life happens, it is the only place where virtue can ever be practiced. Courage is often misunderstood. Many imagine that courage belongs only to extraordinary moments of danger. They wait for dramatic opportunities to prove their strength, while ignoring the quiet acts of bravery demanded every ordinary day. It takes courage to admit you were wrong. It takes courage to begin again after failure. It takes courage to remain patient when anger appears easier. It takes courage to fulfill a difficult responsibility without complaint. These unnoticed victories shape your character far more than rare moments of public recognition because they are repeated constantly and without applause. The first task of a disciplined mind is to see the present clearly before reacting to it. Most suffering begins because judgment arrives before observation has been completed. A delayed reply becomes proof of rejection. A temporary setback becomes evidence of permanent failure. A disagreement becomes a reason to question your entire worth. None of these conclusions arise from reality alone. They arise because imagination rushes ahead of reason. Clear judgment refuses such haste. It asks first what is actually happening before deciding what anything means. When you awaken each morning, resist the temptation to begin the day by carrying yesterday into today. The mistakes of yesterday belong to instruction, not imprisonment. The successes of yesterday belong to gratitude, not pride. Neither deserves authority over the responsibilities waiting before you now. Sit quietly for a few moments and remind yourself that today has its own duties. Promise yourself that you will meet them with honesty instead of hesitation, with discipline instead of distraction, and with thoughtful judgment instead of emotional impulse. As the day begins, you will encounter situations that test your composure more than your abilities. Someone may speak carelessly, plans may change without warning, progress may appear slower than expected. None of these moments force you to abandon reason. They merely invite you to decide whether your response will be governed by circumstance or by principle. Every interruption contains two possibilities. One leads toward automatic reaction, the other leads toward deliberate judgment. Freedom begins where you learn to recognize the difference. Notice how often your mind attempts to escape the present by asking questions that cannot yet be answered. What if everything goes wrong? What if people misunderstand me? What if my efforts fail? Such questions appear important because they concern the future, yet they frequently distract you from responsibilities already within reach. Replace these uncertain questions with one that belongs entirely to today. What action deserves my best judgment right now? This question returns your attention from imagination to responsibility. It restores your strength because it directs effort towards something you can actually influence. There will be moments when the present feels uncomfortable. You may be asked to make a difficult decision. You may need to face criticism without becoming defensive. You may have to continue working despite uncertainty. At such times, the mind often searches for escape through delay, distraction, or complaint. Resist this habit. Stand where you are. Look directly at the situation before you. Separate what belongs to your authority from what belongs elsewhere. Then act upon what remains yours without demanding perfect certainty before taking the first step. The present moment becomes lighter whenever you stop adding unnecessary judgments to it. A task may be difficult, yet it becomes heavier when you declare it impossible before beginning. A conversation may be uncomfortable, yet it becomes more painful when you predict failure before speaking honestly. Reality often asks less from you than your imagination demands. Meet facts with courage instead of approaching possibilities with fear. This simple distinction protects your judgment from burdens it never needed to carry. Practice pausing before every important response. This pause is not hesitation. It is the place where reason gathers itself. Within this brief space, ask whether your next action reflects wisdom or impulse. Ask whether your words will improve the situation or merely satisfy wounded emotion. Ask whether silence serves truth better than immediate reaction. Such pauses appear small, yet they prevent countless mistakes because they allow judgment to reclaim authority before emotion begins governing conduct. Do not overlook the responsibilities hidden within ordinary moments. Returning a message honestly, completing work with care even when no one watches, listening without interrupting, remaining patient while another person struggles. These actions rarely receive admiration, yet they are the true field upon which character is cultivated. A disciplined life is not assembled from rare achievements. It is built through faithful conduct repeated across countless ordinary situations that most people dismiss as insignificant. When disappointment enters the day, refuse to treat it as proof that the day has been ruined. One difficult event does not possess the authority to define every remaining hour. Yet many people surrender the entire day because one expectation failed. They allow frustration from one moment to spread across every later decision. Clear judgment interrupts this habit. It recognizes disappointment without allowing disappointment to become identity. One event belongs to one moment unless you continue carrying it forward through repeated attachment. Observe your speech whenever difficulties appear. The words you choose reveal the condition of your judgment. A mind governed by impulse exaggerates every obstacle. It declares every inconvenience unbearable and every delay unacceptable. A disciplined mind describes circumstances accurately without adding unnecessary despair. It speaks about reality rather than emotional exaggeration. This habit strengthens resilience because language quietly shapes the judgments you continue believing. Another valuable discipline is learning to complete one responsibility before allowing your attention to become occupied by the next. Anxiety frequently grows because the mind attempts to solve several problems simultaneously while finishing none of them well. Bring your full attention to the task immediately before you. Complete it faithfully, then move to the next responsibility with the same careful presence. Such orderly conduct gradually replaces confusion with quiet confidence because the mind learns that steady progress matters more than frantic activity. Throughout the day, remember that another person's conduct never removes your obligation to remain virtuous. Someone else's impatience does not justify your anger. Another person's dishonesty does not excuse your deception. Another person's disrespect does not require you to abandon dignity. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to demonstrate that your principles belong to you rather than to the changing behavior of those around you. This understanding protects your character from becoming dependent upon circumstances beyond your direction. Whenever fear appears, examine what it is asking you to surrender. Does it ask you to abandon honesty? Does it ask you to neglect responsibility? Does it ask you to exchange courage for temporary comfort? Once you identify the demand clearly, you regain the ability to choose deliberately instead of reacting automatically. Fear loses much of its influence when reason exposes the hidden bargain it continually offers. As evening approaches, resist judging the entire day solely by external success or failure. Ask instead whether you met each present moment with increasing steadiness. Did you allow irritation to control your speech, or did you preserve patience? Did uncertainty lead to avoidance, or did you continue acting according to principle? Did disappointment become an excuse for carelessness, or did you return your attention to present duty? These questions measure the only victories that truly belong to you because they concern your own conduct rather than changing fortune. There is a quiet strength that develops when you repeatedly refuse to flee from the present. You stop demanding certainty before action. You stop postponing discipline until emotions become favorable. You stop treating ordinary responsibilities as interruptions to life and begin recognizing them as life itself. Every honest conversation, every completed duty, every restrained reaction, and every thoughtful decision becomes another exercise through which reason establishes deeper authority. Do not seek a life without challenge. Such a life would leave your character untested and your virtues unpracticed. Instead, seek the ability to remain steady regardless of challenge. Every difficult moment contains material from which wisdom may grow if you approach it with disciplined attention. The obstacle itself cannot determine the quality of your response. Only your judgment possesses that authority. Remember this whenever circumstances appear overwhelming. The event stands before you, your judgment stands within you. Confusing these two has caused much unnecessary suffering. One helpful practice before sleep is to revisit 3 moments from the day. Choose one where you acted with courage despite uncertainty. Choose one where your judgment became clouded by unnecessary emotion. Choose one where tomorrow invites improvement through greater attention. This brief review transforms ordinary experience into continuing instruction. It prevents both pride and discouragement because every day becomes another opportunity for refinement rather than another occasion for self-condemnation. You must also learn to release the desire for perfect control over every moment. Some events will surprise you, some plans will change, some efforts will produce unexpected results. None of these realities prevent you from responding with wisdom. The present moment does not require perfection before virtue becomes possible. It requires only willingness, the willingness to observe carefully before judging, the willingness to act honorably despite uncertainty, the willingness to remain faithful to reason even when emotion argues for surrender. Gradually you will notice a profound change. Situations that once overwhelmed your mind begin losing their power. Not because circumstances have become gentler, but because your judgment has become stronger. The same challenges appear, yet your response no longer begins with panic or complaint. It begins with careful observation, thoughtful reflection, and disciplined action. This transformation cannot be given to you by fortune because it has been built through your own repeated choices. The present moment has always contained enough work to occupy an honorable life. It has never required you to master tomorrow before sunset or rewrite yesterday before dawn. It has asked only that you meet what stands before you with clear eyes and unwavering character. When you finally accept this truth, the endless struggle against imaginary burdens begins to fade. Your attention returns to what can actually be done. Your courage becomes practical rather than theatrical. Your judgment becomes calmer because it no longer rushes ahead of reality. Carry this discipline into every morning and every evening. Let each new day begin with the decision to face whatever arrives without fleeing into regret or anticipation. Let each night conclude with honest examination instead of excuse. Continue meeting every present responsibility with patience, fairness, restraint, and courage. Continue allowing reason to guide every judgment before emotion claims authority. In time, you will discover that the strongest life is not built by conquering distant futures, but by confronting each present moment with unwavering steadiness and a mind that refuses to surrender its judgment to fear. Number 10. Live each day as though your final hour approaches. You speak as though tomorrow already belongs to you. You postpone difficult conversations because another opportunity will surely appear. You delay necessary discipline because there will always be more time. You allow resentment to remain because reconciliation can wait. You neglect the improvement of your character because you assume that another season of life will provide better conditions, yet none of these assumptions has ever been promised to you. The greatest illusion governing an undisciplined life is not that death exists. It is the belief that it remains comfortably distant. From this illusion, countless wasted days are born. To remember that your final hour may arrive sooner than expected is not an invitation to fear, it is an invitation to clarity. When you stop assuming endless time, unnecessary concerns begin losing their influence, petty arguments appear smaller, empty ambitions become less persuasive, endless comparison loses its attraction. You begin asking different questions. Instead of wondering how to impress others, you ask whether your conduct deserves your own respect. Instead of asking how much comfort can be gathered, you ask whether this day has been lived with wisdom, justice, courage, and restraint. Every sunrise places before you a responsibility that cannot be transferred to another person. You must decide how this day will shape your character. No one can exercise your judgment on your behalf. No one can choose integrity for you. No one can cultivate your discipline while you remain passive. Life continues moving whether you participate deliberately or merely drift through habit. The passing of time is certain. The quality of your use of time remains entirely within your own hands. Many people imagine that wasting life requires dramatic mistakes. More often it happens quietly. A day disappears through distraction. Another passes through complaint. Another is surrendered to hesitation. Weeks become months, and months become years, while the mind waits for a perfect opportunity that never arrives. Nothing extraordinary prevented growth. The ordinary simply remained unattended. This is why every single day deserves careful attention. A neglected hour eventually becomes a neglected life. When you awaken each morning, remind yourself that this day carries complete value by itself. Do not treat it merely as preparation for some distant future where real living will finally begin. Today is the place where your character is strengthened or weakened. Today is where your judgments become either clearer or more confused. Today is where your habits quietly shape tomorrow. Every future you imagine will eventually arrive as another present day. If you continually neglect today, you are also neglecting every future that depends upon it. Begin the morning with one deliberate question. If this day proved to be my last opportunity to govern my character, how would I choose to conduct myself? This question immediately removes countless distractions. It reminds you that irritation deserves little attention. It reminds you that honesty should never be postponed. It reminds you that meaningful work belongs to the present rather than to some imagined season of greater motivation. Mortality does not shrink life. It concentrates your attention upon what truly matters. As you move through the day, notice how often your mind behaves as though time were unlimited. You postpone reading something that would strengthen your judgment. You delay apologizing because discomfort feels inconvenient. You postpone beginning worthy work because conditions appear imperfect. These delays may seem harmless when viewed individually, yet they accumulate into a habit of living beneath your own potential. The person who continually postpones virtue slowly becomes accustomed to living without it. One of the greatest sources of regret is not failure, it is neglect. You may fail while pursuing honorable action and still preserve peace because your effort reflected integrity. Neglect is different. It leaves behind the painful knowledge that the opportunity existed but was never embraced. It leaves unfinished responsibilities, unspoken truths, and undeveloped character. Such regret grows heavier because it concerns choices that always remained possible, yet were continually delayed. Remember that death does not distinguish between the prepared and the unprepared. It arrives according to its own order rather than according to your plans. Since this remains beyond your authority, direct your attention toward what belongs entirely to you. Prepare your character instead of attempting to predict your future. A well-governed mind remains ready because it does not postpone becoming the person it already knows it ought to be. This understanding changes the way you approach ordinary responsibilities. Washing a dish with care, fulfilling a promise, speaking truthfully, listening patiently, and completing honest work no longer appear insignificant. If this day possesses genuine value, then every duty within it also possesses value. Greatness does not require extraordinary circumstances. It requires faithful attention to whatever responsibility has already been entrusted to you. Consider how differently you would speak if you truly understood that any conversation might be your last with another person. Harsh words would become more difficult to justify. Empty arguments would lose much of their importance. Listening would become more sincere because you would recognize that every encounter carries a dignity impossible to recover once it has passed. This awareness does not make you sentimental, it makes you responsible. The same awareness transforms your relationship with resentment. Carrying bitterness through years of life becomes increasingly unreasonable when you remember how brief those years truly are. Resentment demands constant attention while offering no genuine reward. It persuades you to surrender today's peace in order to preserve yesterday's injury. Release this habit not because another person always deserves forgiveness, but because your own character deserves freedom from continual hostility. Examine also the promises you continually make to yourself. You say that discipline will begin next week. You tell yourself that reflection will become important after life grows less busy. You imagine that courage will appear naturally when circumstances improve. Yet every postponed beginning quietly strengthens the habit of postponement itself. Character is not formed by intentions awaiting future action. It is formed by present decisions repeated faithfully. A valuable morning discipline is to identify one action that deserves completion before the day ends. Make it specific. Complete an overdue responsibility. Restore honesty where avoidance has remained. Offer kindness where indifference has quietly settled. Correct one habit that reason has already judged to be harmful. Finish the day knowing that at least one important duty received your full attention, instead of becoming another promise carried into tomorrow. As the hours pass, guard yourself against becoming intoxicated by trivial pursuits. Not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every opinion deserves response. Not every distraction deserves your attention. Time is limited, and therefore attention must become selective. A disciplined mind asks whether an activity strengthens character or merely consumes another portion of a life already moving swiftly toward its conclusion. This question protects you from wasting precious hours upon things that neither improve your judgment nor benefit those around you. When difficulties arise, remember that they too belong within the limited measure of your days. Complaining cannot lengthen life. Worry cannot prevent every hardship, Anger cannot reverse completed events. Why then allow these habits to occupy so much of your remaining time? Meet obstacles with thoughtful action where action remains possible. Accept what lies beyond your authority with dignity. Refuse to surrender irreplaceable hours to emotional habits that never produce wisdom. Throughout the day, continue asking whether your present conduct would satisfy your own conscience if no further opportunities for correction were given. This question is not intended to create fear. It is meant to sharpen sincerity. It reminds you that each choice possesses significance because opportunities are never endless. Every truthful word spoken today removes the need for future regret. Every honorable action completed today strengthens peace regardless of what tomorrow may bring. As evening approaches, perform a careful review before sleep. Imagine that the day has reached its natural conclusion and ask yourself whether it was lived deliberately or merely consumed. Did you preserve integrity when convenience suggested compromise? Did you fulfill responsibilities instead of postponing them? Did you use your speech to encourage truth rather than conflict? Did you direct attention toward meaningful duties rather than endless distraction? This examination gradually teaches the mind to value quality of living above quantity of days. Another important discipline is learning to appreciate ordinary blessings without assuming they will always remain. Gratitude becomes stronger when you stop treating familiar experiences as permanent possessions. A shared meal, honest labor, quiet conversation, faithful friendship, and moments of peaceful reflection all deserve your full presence because none has been guaranteed beyond today. Appreciation grows naturally when entitlement quietly disappears. Do not misunderstand this practice as an invitation to constant sadness. Its purpose is exactly the opposite. The person who remembers life's uncertainty often discovers deeper joy because he no longer postpones attention to what truly matters. He becomes fully present with meaningful work. He values sincere relationships. He wastes less energy chasing unnecessary approval. He understands that every day already contains enough opportunity for virtue if only he remains awake to it. There will always be another temptation to delay what reason already commands. The mind will continue suggesting that tomorrow offers greater convenience. Resist this deception gently but firmly. Tomorrow has never been placed under your authority. Only today's choices answer to your will. Every moment spent waiting for ideal conditions is a moment surrendered without necessity. Begin where you stand with the responsibilities already before you. Gradually, this discipline transforms your understanding of success. Success no longer means accumulating endless experiences before time expires. It means filling each available day with honorable conduct. A short life governed by wisdom possesses greater value than a long life consumed by distraction. Length alone cannot measure fulfillment. Character remains the only lasting measure because it reflects how faithfully each moment was used. As this awareness deepens, fear of death itself begins losing much of its power. You stop fearing that life has been too brief because you are no longer carelessly abandoning the days already given. You stop wishing for endless time because you have learned to use present time well. Peace grows naturally when every day receives its proper attention. The future becomes less frightening because today's conduct already reflects your highest principles. Carry this understanding into tomorrow morning before the first distraction enters your mind. Rise with gratitude rather than assumption. Accept the day as a complete opportunity rather than an incomplete promise. Perform your duties without delay. Speak truth without unnecessary hesitation. Correct yourself before correcting others. Let every decision be worthy of remembrance, whether many years remain or only a few hours. Continue returning your attention to what belongs within your authority while releasing everything that does not. If the final hour eventually arrives sooner than you expected, Let it find you engaged in honest work rather than idle complaint. Let it find you strengthening your character instead of postponing its improvement. Let it find you fulfilling present responsibilities instead of mourning imagined futures. Let it find your judgments guided by reason, your actions governed by virtue, and your conscience free from the burden of neglected duty. Then the measure of your life will not depend upon how many days were granted to you, but upon how faithfully each day was lived.